All right, everyone. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. And if you were looking outside sometime today and saw a balloon up in the sky, certainly don't panic about that. Or maybe you should panic. I don't know, depending on your theories otherwise. Let's talk some college football. We do that pretty regularly here at the Voice of College Football. We want to welcome in everyone on our various channels as we are bringing in the Big Ten crowd tonight. Last week, when the Big 12 schedule was released, of course, we were right here when the Big 12 schedule was released to break it down for you and run through all the teams and all the various advantages and disadvantages and all the biggest games and biggest matchups. We did the same with the ACC, and now we do so per your request because the Big 10 schedule was released back in October. But here we are to break down the 2023 Big 10 schedule right here at the Voice of College Football. We're just starting. So, in addition to you joining us in the live chat, of course, what you can do is go out there on social media and let people know that we are here talking college football with all of you. So if you want to call the show, you don't have to talk about the Big Ten schedule. We are here to talk about anything in college football with you, but our focus is going to be on the Big Ten schedule. And I am going to run through every schedule in the Big Ten, and I'm going to highlight the pluses and minuses and break it down and review and analyze as only we can right here at the Voice of College Football. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that, of course, if you grab the Amazon link in the description section, put it somewhere where you will remember it. Somewhere you will find it when you're doing your shopping on Amazon. It helps build the channel. It doesn't change your shopping experience one way. It doesn't cost you one penny. It's the same shopping experience. You just grab the link that we provide. And think of this. Amazon makes like 1.6. I heard this number the other day. $1.6 trillion Amazon's worth. The Voice of College Football, our brand is worth just slightly less. We're trying to catch Amazon. We're about 1.4 trillion. And so when you buy, let's say, $100 at Amazon, you don't have to buy $100 worth of merchandise, but let's throw it out there as a round number. $100 at Amazon, we get $2, $4, $6, whatever it is, depending on the product, and then Amazon gets the rest. Why send $100 to them and $0 to the Voice of College Football? So again, the Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. Please grab it. Also, we want to let you know that we've got a scheduling note coming up for next Monday. Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Tony Altamore, our buddy Tony, strategist, consultant, guru of all things that would affect college football and college athletics realignment and expansion, will be here for a live show Monday at 6 Eastern Time. And Tony and I are going to go through all the conferences and all the various dominoes that are in play involving possible next steps in conference expansion and realignment. We've got a few news and notes to run through here real quick in college football. Alabama has hired Notre Dame offensive coordinator Tommy Rees, and actually our buddy Will is going to be hosting a Notre Dame live show here at the Voice of College Football in 2 hours at 11 p.m. Eastern Time to talk about that Notre Dame vacancy at offensive coordinator. Also, Clemson has given raises to its entire staff and contract extensions. I have yet to really look at that and dive into that to see the specifics there. Todd Grantham will not be the next Alabama defensive coordinator. He has moved on to the New Orleans Saints. I don't know if they've watched his film with the Florida Gators. And then we've got Oklahoma and Texas. So there's been a breakdown between what kind of compensation the Big 12 would have needed from the networks in losing Texas and Oklahoma early in 2024 to the SEC. So that, at least at this point, unless other things can be worked out, contract negotiations are broken down in Texas. Oklahoma will stay in the Big 12 until and through 2025. Texas A&M wide receiver Chase Smith returning for the 2023 season. All right, let's get to it right here at the Voice of College Football. Again, we appreciate your super chat contributions. We appreciate all that you can do. Definitely hit the like button. And again, let people out there know that we're talking college football with all of you. To our first caller of the night. Here's a blast from the past. We got David Knight on the line. David.
Whew, man, life's been rough the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Oh boy!
If I'm alive, I'm good. Is David Greenshield is on there? Bring him in if you don't mind.
David, I am being inundated by
Yes.
Davids.
Surrounded by two Davids here. Yeah.
Hey, man, if you guys don't mind, I want to lead off with Notre Dame fan, Purdue graduate, but my default team is always Ohio State.
Go Buckeyes.
They make it into the playoffs, right? So that really is my only team I have left to cheer for. But I died 1,000 deaths when that guy shanked that field goal. I was like, man, I'm still deliberating on this. I know it's been several weeks ago, but do you guys have any explanation why it just carried him the way it did? I mean, was it the hole? Was it the snap? Or what was it?
Mark, do you want me to? I'll just say that, I thought he just shanked it, just bottom line. And I believe that was a few yards out of his range. Okay. Just as an Ohio State fan, I think that looking back on it, I would have felt a little bit comfortable if we'd got him at least 10 yards closer. I will say, I think one of the few mistake play calls that Ryan Day may have made in that game was running Dallin Hayden on first down after Stroud had made the scramble to get to about the 31-yard line there, or 32-yard line. I think if he would have thrown another pass, maybe on first down, maybe gotten a chance to get him at least a few more yards, I think that would have helped to make that field goal a little bit more doable, is where I kind of come away with on that.
But let me ask you something. Well, Mark, I think you're getting ready. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, so I'm not the guy. I will take a line from Todd McShay, who, when it comes to kickers and punters in his NFL draft analysis, basically says, I went and talked to the punting guru or the kicking guru, because he just kind of throws up his hands and says, I don't know, it's kind of like a golf swing. But yeah, I don't know too many college kickers that are comfortable at 50 yards. Comfortable, yeah. Not that they're not capable of hitting it, and he is. He hit from 47 about 5 or 6 minutes earlier.
Right.
But that was a long distance. I was not comfortable with that kick. And like David pointed out, I'm not the guy that's sitting at home calling plays before the ball snapped. I'm not really that guy, but I could see what they were going to run based on that formation that lost them 3 yards with Dallin Hayden. Like, I just didn't think that they were still aggressive enough, considering how hot they were and how much they had Georgia on their heels. It was just a page from Herm Edwards and his many playoff gaffes with the Jets, bogging down in the red zone and trying to kick 48-yard field goals. For Herm Edwards, it was like in blustery winds in Pittsburgh that he was, making those kind of decisions. But go ahead, David.
No, but so what I was going to say, does that go back to the point that they should never put themselves in that position to have their kicker? Maybe he was trying to pull it so hard with his leg, knowing it was such a long distance, that he was going for it, which I totally understand. He's virtually getting ready to win the game for them, but they were up by 14. Like, it's just so many questions I had swirling in my head about that.
Well, I think one of the things that kind of come back to bite them, obviously we can talk about the Marvin Harrison play has been talked about ad nauseum, and it will be. But I think one of the things, to be fair, that kind of came back to bite Ohio State in that fourth quarter was their pass defense in the fourth quarter really came back to bite them a little bit. You saw that one long touchdown that made it 38-35, I'm sure. That receiver was so wide open. It looks like he was fielding a punt. And, they gave up way too many big pass plays. Obviously, you saw against the team up north the last game of the year. And then, in the end, those last couple drives with Georgia, because I wasn't real confident, too, when they made it 41-35 with 2.5 minutes left. I wasn't real confident at that point that Ohio State was going to get a stop defensively, just with the way that game was kind of moving and with the way that Bennett was throwing the ball on Ohio State's defense at that particular point.
But David,
yeah,
Mark, you can chime in too.
Am I
Typically,
allowed
in
to
the
chime
past,
in?
Ohio State's been predicated on how good their defensive backfield is.
Yes, that's a great point.
What happened?
Yeah, I think they've probably had a few misses in recruiting in the secondary. I think some of it's been coaching too. A lot of people have been critical of Jim Knowles a little bit, especially after the last two games. He's the new defensive coordinator this year.
1 year, right?
Yeah, first year. I tend to agree with you. I mean, that first year, the reason that defense was so good in 2019 is they had that perfect combination of Chase Young, who could rush the passer, and then they had that great secondary with Jeffrey Okudah, who was a really high pick. Jordan Fuller was a really good safety. And that's the one thing about this team is, even though I don't think this team was anywhere close to as good as the 2019 team or the 2014 or 2015 teams, with Zeke Elliott and Joey Bosa and those guys, this team actually probably had a better chance to win the national title this year, just for the simple fact that in 2019 they would have had to have faced Joe Burrow and LSU had they've gotten through Clemson, and this year obviously they would have had to have faced TCU. So it goes to show you sometimes you don't always win with your best team either,
No, but I just felt like, they had them where they needed them to be. And, man, it's so disappointing. And like I said, man, they're like my third team out. But I still cheer for them like they're my first team, when they entered the playoffs. Or it just, man, it was so disappointing. And I guess, what do you guys think about Jim Knowles on his first year? Because I don't think it's fair to be too critical of somebody when they just have joined a brand new team. They're installing a brand new defensive philosophy, and they just got there, right? And you have to adjust to the talent, different guys that you're not accustomed to being around. It's such a matriarch, and it's a complex scenario. I think that people think sideline fans like, oh, it's plug and play. It's not plug and play. It's a lot of different variables that go into that. But what do you guys think about the coach, Jim?
Mark,
my response to that, David, would be I get all of your points, but at the same time, let's say you had a wife who could barely, toast or could barely boil water to make Kraft macaroni and cheese, and then your next significant other was a gourmet chef and you didn't know what she was going to fix, but she had to adjust to a new kitchen and everything. You would make that trade, wouldn't you? Even if she didn't know exactly where the pots and pans were kept. And that's how I see Jim Knowles. He went from 3-star Oklahoma State talent to top, probably on the defensive side, not top 3 talent, but probably like top 8 to 10 talent in the country, and hit a full off season to get him ready.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, and I think I will say they made a little bit of improvement from actually some would say a lot of improvement from 21 to 22. Their defensive line was a little bit better, and I think their linebacker play was a lot better in 22 than it was in 21. Their problem is the secondary, like we were talking about earlier, David, was just that bad. Their cornerback play really struggled for most of the year. You could kind of see it in earlier games against like Penn State. They got out of the Penn State game because they got some big turnovers again, and won that game. And then Stroud hit some big throws to Marvin Harrison late in that game. And then even against Maryland, little Tua carved them up and hit some big plays against them. And they really had to kind of outscore them to win that game. So there were some signs, even before the last 2 games, that their pass defense was having some struggles.
So, okay, moving forward, what do you think the antidote is for Ohio State?
Well, I think you have to. I think that the good news is they're going to get some of these defensive linemen and linebackers back next year. They're going to get some of their secondary players back, and it's going to be another year in their system. And it's going to come back to their coaching and their player development. I still think their D line and their linebackers could still be very good next year. The question still comes back to, can they find that good cornerback play that they've had in the past, like we were talking about earlier. And that's really going to be the key. I think that and their offensive line are going to be the key to their next season, because they lost 3 offensive linemen to the draft.
Do they still have the same secondary coach?
I think they switched secondary coaches this year. Okay. They brought in a couple of new guys. Tim Walton, who used to play at Ohio State a long time ago. Mark probably remembers Tim from back in the 90s.
Absolutely, I do.
Yeah,
they brought in Tim Walton and Perry Eliano, one from the University of Cincinnati and one from the NFL ranks. And so they coached this last season, David, the secondary.
Okay. So
one note on Jim Knowles, and there are so many other factors that go into this statistic, but still, if you track his defensive performance at Oklahoma State, they didn't get better initially. It took 3 seasons for them to get better, and then they got exceedingly better and better and better and better. And then his last defense was the top 5 defense in the country.
I did read that. And I can't remember the team he was with before Oklahoma State. He had the same track record where they didn't start out great, but as you said, Mark, they just got better and better as things progressed. And that was kind of what I was thinking, is that his first year in, that, I did understand the comparison with the good-looking wife with the chef capabilities. But I do get what you're saying.
You didn't get my analogy, David?
No, I did.
Okay.
Mark, I just didn't expect you to go with that analogy. I'm sorry. You kind of pulled that out of nowhere, my friend.
Yeah, I'm not a big analogy guy, typically. I just tell you, they're good, they're not good. There's not a whole lot of exotic calls on my part, but I went with that time.
I do want to make a comment about the upcoming season, kind of since we're talking Big Ten a little bit. I do expect the conference, and I've said this to Mark, to be on definitely an upward trend this year. I think that there's a feeling that, because the team up north's got a lot of people back this year. They're going to have the quarterback back. They're going to have the running backs back. They've got a lot of returning starters coming back on their team. They've got a favorable schedule. They got to go to Penn State. The non-conference is not extremely. Is it fair to say that their non-conference is weak, Mark? I don't think I'm using too strong a word to describe their non-conference.
When is it ever strong?
Yeah, when they've had Notre Dame in the past, maybe at least they've had at least a decent game in there. Let's put it that way.
Hawaii?
What's up?
I said Hawaii. That was
the
game.
This one's not really up to snuff. And, Penn State's expecting to have as good a team as they've had probably since those Saquon Barkley, Trace McSorley teams, maybe even a better team than that. So, and I don't know what Mark's feelings are. I think the West is going to be a lot stronger this year. I don't know if that's your feelings, Mark.
Well, I think that Matt Rhule and Luke Fickell are huge upgrades. And I especially think that Luke Fickell is going to have an immediate impact. Now, I can't expect him to work miracles. He's not going to have his guys in play, but I just think he's good enough coach that Wisconsin's going to be strong next year. They're going to be substantially improved.
What kind of offense do you think they're going to run?
They're going to put their foot on the gas. And they brought in Phil Longo from North Carolina. And it appears as though Wisconsin's going to break all sorts of trends and all sorts of tendencies and going to open it up.
Yeah, I think it's Matt Rhule's going to be interesting. It's interesting they tried Scott Frost for all those years, and now they go back to Matt Rhule. I think Iowa could be interesting this year too, Mark. I think getting Cade McNamara, the quarterback transfer. that helped get the, well, I shouldn't say he helped get them to the playoff in 21. It was really their defense and their running game. But I think that Mark and I both agree he's a clear upgrade over Spencer Petras at quarterback for Iowa. And although Brian Ferentz is still running that offense at Iowa, as far as we know, right, Mark?
And Dad's looking over him. I think it's a philosophy, not a player issue. It's until you change your philosophy, then what will you expect to be different?
Yeah.
I think when you're that bad on offense, it has to be a number of things. First of all, I got to think that they've missed in recruiting. Not necessarily looking at the recruiting rankings, but that a lot of their selections have been misses. The next thing is that, yes, they run a prehistoric offense. Next, they have not had a good quarterback the last 3 years. And if you don't have a good quarterback, everything can work. The offensive line blocked the play. The receiver was open and he misfired and threw the ball at his ankles. And I am saying that based on memory of watching Spencer Petras repeatedly take a clean pocket and an open receiver and throw the ball nowhere near his radius. So he was that bad most of the time. He was bottom 3 in the Big Ten in quarterbacking. And when you lose your best wide receiver, your best, one of the best offensive linemen in the country at center, and your best running back from the 21 team to 22, then that's going to be, and you recruit like Iowa, you're not going to be able to make up for that always. So there's a reason that they're as bad as they are on offense year after year after year after year. It has to go back to the coaching and the lack of player development and the inability to scheme creatively in any such way. And as David knows, David Greenshield there at the bottom, I'm not a big play calling guy. I think that's somewhat overrated, but it is important. So I don't want to be misconstrued there. I do believe play calling is important, and scheme and approach and setting up plays and really knowing how to manage a game, not just calling that specific play, but how to set up a defense. All of that is very important, and Iowa doesn't know how to do that.
Well, it's, to kind of add to that real quick, Mark, I mean, in college, you obviously need the Jimmies and Joes, but even if you get them, the coaches can still screw it up. So, we've seen that in the past with, talented football teams where the coaching is not, quote unquote, the best. And, some of the play calling, maybe a coach hits on a bad offensive coordinator. Obviously, I was going to tie this in also what Mark had mentioned earlier. I know you like Notre Dame, but Tommy Rees going to Alabama, I found really interesting, Mark. I don't know, what your thoughts are on that, but I heard a lot of Notre Dame people, and I listened to a lot of Irish talk where they were ready to get rid of him a long time ago. And here is Nick Saban, the greatest coach, taking in Tommy Rees, an offensive coordinator that Notre Dame didn't even want.
Yes.
I find that to be fascinating.
Fascinating myself.
What's
I will
that?
trust Nick Saban every time he sees something in Tommy Rees. Yeah, I agree with you. I've always seen and heard and seen the billboards and had the people comment here about Tommy Rees and he's lousy. I just can't imagine that Nick Saban's hiring a lousy offensive coordinator.
But let me ask you something. When you see fan banter, how many actual sideline fans do you think know too much about how to actually develop a play calling plan for a college football game? I mean, it's, I'm a Notre Dame fan, but Notre Dame fans are idiotic. They don't have a clue. I'm not saying all of them, but so many of them, he just shouldn't have done this. I'm like, man, bro, what do you know about calling a play calling scheme in college football? Because there's 11 guys on offense, right? It only takes one person to mess up their scheme or their assignment in that individual play. And when it doesn't work out, then all of a sudden it becomes, oh, that was a poor play call. Well, maybe if everybody would have executed their assignment, it might have been a good play call. It's so many subjective things and all that. And if Tommy Rees was such a loser play caller, I do not believe that Nick Saban would have wanted it.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, but I don't know. I'd seen the outcry from a lot of Notre Dame fans and their fan base saying that.
I have too.
And probably you have too, David. And I think that's the thing. I was a little surprised that when Marcus came in that he didn't maybe bring in his own guy. And I think especially when your background is like Marcus's, which is the defensive background, and it's that vice versa theory too. Like Ryan Day's got to find the right kind of defensive coach to, run his defense. And then Marcus is, obviously comes from the defensive side of the ball. He's got to find the right kind of offensive guy, to run his offense. So, I mean, it only, stands to reason. But
so I'm going to duck out of here, but you guys, give me your projection on Ohio State next year. What do you think?
It's really early. I've got to see how this quarterback battle plays out. I mean, I want to say I still think they can go 11-1 this year. I'm hoping that the one isn't at the end of the year at Ann Arbor. I can't live in a world where we lose 3 games in a row to them. That
would suck.
I don't want to live in that world. I don't want to imagine living in that world. I lived in that world once. It was called the 1990s, and it was not a good time. But
I don't think that you will live in that again. I think that Ryan Day will make reparations for that not to happen again. But Mark, you're up to bat.
6-6. How about that? There we go.
Wow.
Oh, come on
Way too
now.
early for predictions. Way too early for predictions.
No way.
David, thanks for dropping by. We appreciate it.
Guys.
Always a pleasure, David.
Both of you, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate it.
David Knight, the one and only. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Good to see you. Hey, Mark, did you put up some of the key non-conference games? I was just kind of curious to see.
I have not. What
the schedule looked like.
I was going to be running through maybe ESPN. They have probably updated their week-to-week schedule, but I was going to run through everybody's schedule. Is what I was going to do. Is so I don't have any graphics built. I was just going to pull up each individual schedule in the Big Ten and run through it.
Yeah, I mean, I know how Ohio State, obviously at Notre Dame, Penn State at West Virginia.
Yes.
To start the year.
I don't know where the game is, but yeah, they play West Virginia.
I thought that was at Morgantown. By the way, they used to play on a more regular basis, I thought, in the 80s and early 90s.
They played every year. Yes.
When did that stop? I was wondering. I was going to dig into your memory bank on that one.
When Penn State joined the Big Ten.
Oh, okay. So, 93. That would have made sense, obviously. Yep. Okay.
That killed all those Penn State, Boston College. They would play every year. Penn State, Syracuse, Penn State, Maryland. Penn State Pitt, of course, was the big one at the end of the year. All those died.
Yeah. I actually think that they're done with their back-to-back with Auburn. So that's really, I think Penn State doesn't have much other than that non-conference, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe that's pretty much it.
Because I was trying to think, Wisconsin's got to take a return trip, I believe, to Washington State this year.
Go on the road, yes. Michigan State's got Washington at home.
Yep. Now, that's an interesting team, Mark. I think Michigan State, year 4 of the Mel Tucker era in East Lansing.
Mel Tucker 2 down.
Yep. He got his contract, obviously, because Kenneth Walker Jr. had a big season in 2021, and they decided to pay him way too much money.
Why these schools run to, a lawyer to draw up a new contract, an extended contract, as soon as a coach has one decent season. I just don't. An unproven coach,
right? Yeah, that boggles the mind. Yeah. I think that's an interesting that will be interesting to see for me. Is just the direction Mel Tucker in that second year. I think Pennick's coming back. Unless he's done some big time recruiting in that secondary, I could see Penix lighting them up like a Christmas tree again.
And in Michigan State's case, even more so, when they overpaid for Mel Tucker to begin with. They lured him away from Colorado, and they overpaid him to begin with. Just a dumb move by Michigan State. Unnecessary.
And to be fair, I've been a Mark D'Antonio, obviously being a former Buckeye, but he did not leave that program in the best position for Mel Tucker to take over, to be fair as well.
Yeah, it was much better 5 years earlier, but still, he was able to win 7 games and go to bowl games and win bowl games with what was in the cupboard.
Yeah, I was going to say one other comment about that West, Mark. Do you have kind of an early feel on who? Do you see that more like a Wisconsin, Iowa kind of race, or
yes?
You haven't. Okay,
those are my 2 teams right now.
Okay.
I'd have to do a deeper dive into Illinois. Of course, they lose Tommy DeVito, who wanted to come back, but he was denied by the NCAA for another year of eligibility. They lose
Brown's
Chase
off
Brown.
Yep.
They lose 3/4 of a secondary that was really good, including Witherspoon, a Thorpe finalist. And I know that Illinois had a really good transfer portal run, but I don't know if it's going to make up for all those losses. I thought they were the best team in the division last year. They didn't win the division, but I thought they played the best. We may have lost David here. We are going to go through the schedules here at the Voice of College Football. I want to run through all the Big Ten schedules. We appreciate the Super Chat contribution coming in from Daniel, who says, will Big Ten get 2 playoff teams again? Well, certainly the Big Ten would be second to the SEC in regards to having the elite top-level talented teams to do so, whether that's Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Penn State. I would rank them right now, Michigan, Ohio State, a smidge over Penn State. I think Ohio State's got the better roster. I am more confident in Penn State's newly appointed quarterback, Drew Aller, who takes over for, of course, Sean Clifford. We will look at a schedule here in just a second, but we'll take this call from Dr. C.
Hey, how's it going, Mark?
I'm doing well. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Thanks for being on. If you want to add me to the other caller, that's fine. No worries. Unless you just want to take this call on its own.
Yeah, what you got tonight?
Well, I was just talking about looking up because this is about Big Ten. So, as an Arkansas fan,
it does not have to be about the Big Ten. That's
okay.
Topic tonight. In every show, we are open to just college football discussion. Any teams.
Got you.
That's always the rule.
Today, Auburn got a 4-star quarterback out of Little Rock Christian. They signed him, so that was kind of heartbreaking to see. And one of the few local.
Is that for 23 or for 24?
I want to say it's for 24, right? Because he signed today. If he would have been 23, he would have signed yesterday, right?
Well, no, that is the beginning of the signing period.
Oh, okay.
The next signing period. So we will still have, there's still a couple scattered stragglers out there in the 2023 class that have yet to sign. But you're telling me that Arkansas signed a 4-star quarterback?
No, that was Auburn.
Oh, yeah. I know
but
that.
He's out of Little Rock.
White. Yes, out of Little Rock. I got you. A Arkansas high school quarterback.
Yeah.
Not to Arkansas, but yes, I saw that. Walker White. Yep.
Yeah. I hate seeing 4 stars, because Arkansas produces maybe 2 or 3, if that.
Yes.
And they never want to stay home.
Yeah, we actually posted a recruiting video that I hope people would check out, in which I ran through all the states and what type of talent they produce. And off the top of my head, I think Arkansas produced 3 4-stars.
Yeah.
This year.
So, anytime there's a 4-star, they never stay home. This guy, I forget the name of the other guy. He also went to Auburn, 4-star. But going back to the Big Ten talk, sort of to tie it in Arkansas, Brett Bielema with Illinois. Was that a flash in the pan, just lucky, or do you think he can have continued success?
He's going to have to recruit better, but I don't think it's lucky because I think he's a really good head coach. So I've got complete confidence in Brett Bielema. However, his first 2 recruiting classes weren't very good. Now, in that division, you can get away with that. He also did extremely well in the transfer portal. So that we now have to, you can't just say, okay, so-and-so at the 33rd ranked recruiting class. You got to look at, okay, transfer portal, they were 6th in the country. Okay, well, then that's why 247 Sports lays that out for us and combines those projections, those evaluations into one off-season kind of talent acquisition ranking. And Illinois did well in the transfer portal, but their 2 recruiting classes under Brett Bielema, not good.
Yeah, he wasn't a bad recruiter at Arkansas, but he wasn't definitely bringing in major talent. Where I remember when he had that successful season at Arkansas where they beat Texas in the bowl game.
Yep.
They had Pittman was the offensive line coach, and we had such a physical and brutal offensive line that year.
Yep.
And
I remember it.
I remember seeing them the next season, and the offensive line, because Pittman had left for Georgia, and they had brought in an offensive line coach from the Buffalo Bills, who supposedly was pretty good. And I mean, it was night and day. Pittman's offensive line was physical, nasty. They were Pittman, and the offensive line was a shadow of what it was. And from that, and also very bad. Rob Smith had a fantastic year for his first year with the Razorbacks, and then he just fell apart. An absolute one of the worst defensive years Arkansas has had as far as like watching them play defensively.
Yeah.
Rob Smith, Rob Smith went on to Minnesota and also
he's done great. He has done great at Minnesota. Now, Brett Bielema, it's very odd to me how it went down at Arkansas, because I'm not necessarily remembering if there were off the field or any periphery issues that he was having with the AD or the administration or anything like that. I know that he didn't do anything in terms of off-field conduct that contributed to that, but his seasons, each season did better and better. He had that Texas win that you just mentioned in the Texas Bowl. Then the next year they won another game they had an additional win. So they went 7-6, then they went 8-5. They beat Kansas State in a bowl game. Then they had a really good start to the season, but they crashed late. They blew a 24-0 lead against Virginia Tech in the bowl game. And then they had a bad season, and he's out on one bad season.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be very mistaken, I think Chris Long, the AD, left at that point. He goes on to go to Kansas, I think. And I think that might have played a role. There was, I think, like an intern AD, female lady. I remember she's the one that fired him on the field right after they lost their last game. Yeah, but I think what it would seem to really hurt Bill, I always butcher his name, I'll never get it right, was he lost his offensive line coach, Pittman, and the offensive coordinator also left to Georgia, Chaney, who did a fantastic job. I think I was really surprised how well they worked because, Brett likes to run the ball, and Chaney was Dooley's offensive coordinator at Tennessee, who liked to spread the ball. But I think both of them mixed well because he had the smash mouth, and then Chaney had the spread. So it was a good balance. They worked really well together. Once those guys left, I mean, Arkansas was a shadow of itself. I think what kind of did him in was that the games were just ugly. They were boring and ugly. So
for one season, though.
Yeah. That's very true.
Season.
And then they had the brilliant idea to bring Chad Morrison.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was probably one of the darkest eras of Arkansas football. I mean, it was horrid.
Oh, yes. You know, not only did they go back-to-back 0-8, 0-16 in the SEC, but they lost to the likes of Western Kentucky, Toledo, North Texas, somebody else in there. Like, they were losing a group of Colorado State.
Yeah.
That's just unacceptable for anyone in the Power Five, let alone Arkansas. D-Lob, B2010, D-Lob 2010, says that Arkansas will always be a dumpster fire. I don't know if D-Lob 2010's
he
been
doesn't
following.
watch. He doesn't watch Arkansas.
He hasn't really been watching Arkansas football.
Yeah.
Arkansas football would have a top 15 status in the history of college football. So if Arkansas is a dumpster fire, then 85% of the nation is a dumpster fire.
Yeah. No, it's actually for the state being so small.
Yeah.
And, you know, it actually has a very solid program. It's not, you know, everybody wants, you know, to be Alabama. No one's Alabama. You know, Alabama's Alabama and Georgia's Georgia. No one else in the country is that. Arkansas, I don't think. Arkansas aspires to be a solid threat, you know, to anyone that plays them. Just play them hard and make bowl games. But, man, it was just such a downhill since Petrino, you know. Petrino had us right there. We were in the SEC championship, such a solid team. And then not the SEC championship, no. The last one we made to a major bowl, you know, playing Ohio State, playing Kansas
in the top 10 twice. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, Petrino was the guy that had us at the verge of potentially having something worthwhile. And then unfortunately, you know, he falls off a bike.
Yeah, he made a few poor choices there, as we know.
I told Ty Hudson, you know, I was hoping, you know, if Kendall Browse would have took the OC at Mississippi State, could have there been a small chance that Petrino would have been the choice for OC at Arkansas? I think Ty said there was no chance Petrino ever comes back to.
No. You stay far away from that. And I believe in second chances. I believe in all of that. But when you are the university, you're the school, there's just no reason to get involved in dealing with that nightmare of a public relations mess. There's just no reason to bring somebody like that back. You know, if it was the only job in the world and you felt bad for the guy and thought that he mended his ways, that would be one thing. But he's got 130 other jobs that he can go get an offensive coordinator position. And he found one with Jimbo. So Jimbo and Bobby Petrino as a pair in Texas A&M. I don't know about that one.
You don't like that as far as the chemistry between them?
No. Well, I don't know. I don't know the individuals personally, but I know how they act, and I know how volatile that Jimbo Fisher is. I don't know if that's a great pair.
Yeah, they seem like they would clash. Both of them are kind of want to have control.
I would always, if I were a head coach, be leery about hiring a former head coach to be a coordinator, especially a head coach who'd been successful, who may look at me as, oh, I'm better than you. I can do the job better than you. I'm just happen to be in this position. I would just be a bit hesitant to do that.
Yeah. And last thing, because I know not a lot of folks like Arkansas football, but Dan Enos as the OC, what grade would you give that? Is it from Kendall Briles? Is that a step down potentially, or do you think it's even?
Well, I think it's a slight step down, but not significantly. Dan Enos has had a checkered career in regards to success. If you go talk to the Miami fans, they're certainly going to give him a thumbs down for the most part.
Well, he did a pretty good job in Maryland, I think. I've been watching a lot of Maryland film, and they scored well pretty much with it. I mean, they gave Ohio State a run for their money.
Yeah, that was the Dan Enos team in 2017. 2018. Yeah.
So at first I was really bummed out because I think Kendall Briles is a fantastic play caller. In Arkansas, for some reason, a lot of people don't like him, but I think he's a fantastic play caller. So I was sad to see him go, and I wasn't thrilled with Enos because Enos was the OC with Brent when Chaney, when they had a bad season. But I think I saw the play calling for Maryland, and I'm a little bit more optimistic.
Well, I certainly was not locked in on Arkansas football and never am in watching every game, but I watch them play 4 or 5 times a year and play the better teams. And I don't think, aside from getting trounced at Georgia 2 years ago, just like everybody else did, I certainly thought that that they ran their offense proficiently and developed KJ Jefferson. Like, he didn't look like a potential starting quarterback to me from a touch and polish standpoint when he first got playing time.
Absolutely. No, KJ grew a lot. Yeah, it was a major loss. I don't think the Razorbacks understand how good he is as an OC. But we'll see how this season goes. All right, Mark. Well, I'll let your other callers get a chance.
Thanks you, so Dr. C. Appreciate you being here.
Of course. Thanks. Bye.
Right here at the Voice of College Football, we appreciate Jason. Thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Let's see if I can read this correctly. Michigan gonna three-peat on Big and OSUCK. I think he had a number of typos in that super chat, but that's okay. You can probably attempt to retype that. Send us another super chat. Add a 0 to the. So that was another error. Add a 0 to the super chat and retype that super chat contribution. But we appreciate that. Thank you so much for that with the maize and blue flag or whatever that is at the end of the super chat. And we will, at some point, if I have to be here till 3 o'clock in the morning, we are going to review all the Big Ten schedules. We will do that. But while we've got callers, we'll go to the callers. We got Brian on the line. Brian, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing just fine. What's going on?
Hey man, I didn't realize this, but is it true the Big Ten only has 1 5-star this cycle? And obviously at Ohio State.
Based on, if you look at the 247 Sports rundown, it's Ohio State with a 5-star, and Penn State and Michigan have none, and nobody else has any. If you look at some other services, they've got Ohio State with 2.
That's crazy.
It is, isn't it?
Has that happened before?
Well, it happens that Ohio State typically has the most. They usually have more than anybody in the conference, like the rest of the conference put together.
Yeah.
But to that degree, oh man, Maryland usually picks up 1, and Michigan usually has 1 or 2, and Penn State 1, maybe 2. There's usually a collection of 6 or 8.
That's wild. And obviously a lot of that has to do with the NIL. Like, who was it? I think it was a quarterback. I don't know if it was a quarterback. I think it was a quarterback that committed to ASU, and it was like out of left field.
Yeah, Jaden Rashada.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a wild world we're in now when it comes to recruiting. It's just crazy. It's like the things that used to seem to matter to recruits seem to not even be a major factor with a lot of these kids.
Yeah, there's no question about that. I'm sure a lot of them just come out of high school now and think, okay, I'm going to go to the place that's going to offer me the most money.
Yeah, I love that Nick Saban story, the one about where
Yeah.
they were asked to get his like girlfriend and or sister, or I forget who it was exactly, but
he's not going to mess around with that nonsense. So there's still a lot to be said about the football brand and their ability to develop players, coach players, and get them to the next level, and all the typical selling points. Because if you look at the recruiting rankings, they haven't really changed. Ohio State didn't get sabotaged by NIL.
no, but they've taken it might not seem like a big step, but they've definitely taken a step back from where they've been since
Really.
I mean,
what's your indication on that?
I forgot what the exact stat was, but I think it was the fewest amount of, I mean, obviously 5 stars are a dime a dozen, but it was like the fewest amount of 5 stars they've had since
5 stars are
2016.
not a dime a dozen. 2 stars are a dime a dozen. 5 stars are not a dime a dozen. There's only like 35 of them.
Or that's what I meant. But what I'm saying is, like,
understand that if you take the player, so Ohio State signed one of the smallest classes out of any team in the top 25. If you look at the average player rating, and I broke this down in a video I posted today, they had the third best player rating of any team in the country.
Oh yeah. I was just saying, like, I read it was the fewest amount of 5 stars they've gotten since I think it was 2016. I think the stat was. Yeah. I mean, obviously you said it's a smaller class, but there were kids, I mean, that, because of, I mean, they're one of the schools that are, I would say, is vastly behind on NIL that they usually would have gotten in years past. Like, this class my point is, this class pre-NIL, if this was pre-NIL, there were kids that they would have gotten, but because they're behind on NIL, they didn't get. So what I'm saying is, this class had the potential, if you go by, what it was before NIL, to be more than it was, but because of NIL, they missed out on a few opportunities that otherwise they would have had.
Yeah. Well, there are certainly schools that are more ahead of the curve than others. But again, if you look at the recruiting rankings, you really can't, aside from possibly Miami, and Miami's always had the potential with the players that are in state, and now that they've got a top line recruiter as a head coach in Mario Cristobal, and he's put together a coaching staff that did a crappy job on the field this past year, but they can recruit. So I'm not really questioning Miami's number 7 ranking, but maybe it was aided, and there's certainly, with John Ruiz in the mix, aided by NIL. But we haven't really seen the impact of NIL. Like, we haven't seen Louisville have the number 4 class in the country, or Georgia have the number 37 class in the country because they didn't get their NIL business together. We haven't seen it impact that we can, in a way that we can tell. We know that there's an impact. There's no question there's an impact. I'm just saying it's not noticeable in the recruiting rankings.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, obviously, when I say this is something that you're not going to necessarily see right away, but you could start to see, like, little chips in the armor, so to speak, of what it could be down the road. So my point, I mean, Michigan has the same problem right now to a much greater extent, with them because of several factors. But this is something I can see, if they don't get the NIL in line, it being a trickle down effect over the next couple of years. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But I mean, also, I wanted to comment on what's your opinion on Ryan Day still harping about the Peach Bowl? Do you think he should just move on from that? Because, like, I've been seeing a lot of he's still like crying about the targeting call. I think you should just move on from that at this point.
Well, anytime there's a situation like that, what I need to know, and I didn't watch this news conference, we did our Ohio State show yesterday, and so we had our 3 guys on, Kevin, Steve, and Tony, talk about Ryan Day and their interviews with the other 10 coaches. So I didn't watch it myself. I just got feedback from them. Actually, it brought to mind a little content strategy that hit me today that I might take off on. But anyway, so it's one thing if he brought it up. It's another thing if he was asked about it. And I can about guarantee he was asked about it. So if he's asked about it,
yeah, he was. He was asked.
Okay,
he was asked. No, I agree. I think I think I have more of a problem with the way he answered it. He basically said, "I still don't know what the basic." I mean, I'm summarizing it here, but he basically was like, I still don't know what the answer is, but I did get 3 answers. I went from the Big Ten. They told me exactly what it was. I went to the Pac-12. They told me exactly what it was. And I went all the way up to the NCAA. They told me what it was, but I still don't have an answer. But they gave him 3, definite answers.
Well,
on what
maybe he didn't explain it well, but it sounds like he went to the Pac-12, the Big Ten, and the NCAA, and they gave him answers, meaning they responded, but he didn't consider them to be clear answers that explained their rationale. That's what it sounds like.
I feel you. I just more would look for an answer along the lines of like, and I guess I know I'm not the coach, but like what I would want my coach is more along the lines is like, hey, that was a month ago. It was a terrible loss. I'm not trying to harp on that. Like something along those lines instead of like giving a long-winded answer on how like, how devastating it was. I still don't have an answer. I basically investigated the entire country on like for a different answer, like that's just how I look at it. That's just me, I guess.
Well, I don't have an issue with what you're saying. That's your personal preference, but I don't think it's so Ryan Day obviously went to those extremes, and I think he's justified in going to those extremes. Not that it was a bad call. I think it was a questionable call. I'm not saying it was a bad call. It was a questionable call. And had it been called targeting, we could be having the same debate going the other direction. So I think it was on the borderline. And I think that there are too many head coaches that blow off these type questions and give you the coach speak line that you just threw out there. I think it's rather refreshing that he actually explained, this is what I did.
Yeah,
that's
I
what
get
he
you.
was asked. What have you done to follow up on the targeting? It sounds like that's what the question was.
I get your point. I guess I should have more problem with why even ask that question.
Well,
I guess.
Then you have an issue with because basically football season's really short and the off season's really long, and we need things to talk about. And if you're Ohio State, the most important thing to talk about right now, even though it can't be changed, nothing can be done about it. They lost the game, but that they basically lost the national championship, on the last play of the game.
Yeah, I feel you. I mean, I guess it kind of reminds me of, when Michigan, the JT Barrett spot in the Michigan game. It's very similar to that, but
yeah.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I understand. So did you see Georgia's schedule next year?
I know that they don't play anyone out of conference. They play like UAB and, of course they play Georgia Tech. That's all I remember. I know that I've looked at it.
Michigan also has obviously one of the softer schedules in
Yes.
terms of definitely the non-conference. But if you look at that Georgia schedule, I think the stat was like the 8 or 9 of the teams, they even finished 500 or they finished not above 500. It's something crazy. Like they might have the weakest schedule I've ever seen next year.
Well, of course, they always play Auburn from the West Division, which is typically a tough game, but Auburn's, until proven otherwise, not that good with 5 wins last year. And so I'm trying to think who they would be playing. Are they playing Ole Miss this year out of the West?
I don't think so.
Well, they're playing
look it up
somebody.
real quick.
They're playing somebody else out of the West. And it's not Alabama.
Let me look. I think
it's not
I don't
Alabama.
Know, but you look.
And they just played Arkansas 2 years ago, and they just played Mississippi State last year. They played Texas A&M recently. I think it's Ole Miss.
It might be, but if you look at it, I think they were supposed to play Oklahoma. I think they were supposed to play Oklahoma, but because they're coming to the SEC, it's similar to the Michigan thing. They were supposed to play UCLA, but that ended up getting canceled out. Maybe not for similar reasons, but it's pretty much the same situation. Now, the one caveat is obviously, their national championships 2 years in a row. So, yeah, there you go. that it?
That is the Michigan schedule, because the
Oh, I didn't
title
look.
of the live stream is we're breaking down the Big Ten schedule. So we're going to try to stay in order here. And that's what I'm going to get
Good
to
point.
when our call comes to an end here. Got anything
Yeah,
else?
ours
for
is
me,
pretty
Brian?
weak. I'm not gonna lie, man. Ours is pretty weak, but no, that's
Georgia,
it, man.
But Georgia's just in a position where they don't need to apologize for that, because they're the defending national champions and they play in the SEC, and they could say, well, we still have to play. Who do they have to play? Tennessee. And then other than that, Kentucky is going to be decent, and South Carolina is going to be decent. But yeah, for an SEC schedule, off the top of my head, it doesn't sound like it's going to be too good.
Yeah, that one last comment I will say, and it's a positive for Ohio State. That I think that pickup at corner, I think that was huge for them. Transfer portal, they need that. And finally, hey man, I can't wait to three-peat, man. It's gonna be nice. It's gonna be nice.
Well, you almost assuredly will make the playoff, or at least the SEC championship game with that schedule. But
no, Michigan.
Oh, talking about Michigan winning the Big Ten.
Yeah, 3 years in a row, man. Can't wait.
All right. Well, again, let's not mark up those wins yet. The first four, sure, go ahead and mark those up. But after that, it gets a bit tougher.
That's true. I'm gonna savor it, because I think Michigan could, be in some trouble after next year with the way recruiting is going. So I'm just savoring this time.
Recruiting was not the best. All right, Brian.
Have a good one, man.
Appreciate you stopping by, man. All right. We will segue from Brian's phone call talking about the Wolverines mostly into the Michigan schedule, and also Jason's comment, of course. So, Jason, all right. I understand your skepticism about Miami's recruiting class at number 7 in the country, but let's keep in mind, first of all, I did state that NIL was a factor. Number 2, I did state John Ruiz and NIL are factors. However, no, Miami did not buy a recruiting class much more than anybody else in regards to look at Miami's recruiting classes and understand, number one, Mario Cristobal is a great recruiter. You can question his game management and his game preparation, which I have a million times on the Miami channel. However, as a recruiter, he's top notch. And they put together a staff of tremendous recruiters. And they're in the state of Florida. That, if you check out the video I posted today, which I think is a damn good video, give it a look, because I broke down a ton of metrics regarding this 2023 recruiting class. And yes, they got players in that state. They've got the best talent in the country. The best high school talent is in the state of Florida. And they have recruited well with marginal teams in the past, and others have as well. So it's not completely an aberration for teams that win 5 and 6 games to go out and get a good recruiting class. Like, understand, not all of these players are locked in on, like, we watch college football every week and we know what the win-loss records are of everyone and how many playoff games they've won. And most of these high school players, they're not watching college football. They're not watching much college football. I guarantee most of them, other than by reputation and what they're told and what they know just from what's talked about, that's what they know about college football. And the likes of a Miami is always going to have the ability to go out because these kids grow up in their backyard. If Miami, think about this. I don't remember the county total, but it's like only 3 or 4 counties that surround the University of Miami. If they didn't go anywhere else to recruit, just said, we're just going to recruit in these 3 or 4 counties, they wouldn't have enough scholarships for all the 4 stars, the 4 and 5 stars. They couldn't sign them all. They don't need to go anywhere. All right. Jason, if you want to talk about that, you can certainly give us a call. All right, let's start to look at the schedule here. Michigan basically doesn't play anyone the first 4 weeks of the season. That's what we're learning right now. For the second consecutive year, the Michigan schedule is a complete and utter embarrassment. This should not happen in college football. And I'm not necessarily blaming Michigan. I'm blaming the system. As I have many times, the Baylors of the world have gone out and not scheduled anyone forever. They're starting to, which is good to see. Baylor is playing, I believe, Utah this year and played BYU the last 2 years. But Baylor has been the biggest culprit in the nation, and others have been as well. And Michigan has over the last 2 years. We know that they canceled a series against UCLA. And even though I've gone over it a couple times, I forget exactly why. But this should not be allowed. This is why there should be a commissioner or a governing body over college football, and they would have many functions, and one would be scheduling. This is pathetic. It's ridiculous. And why is a national championship contender, a team, a program with the status of Michigan playing East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green? Why? Because they can. That's why, because they can. All right, let's get to the conference schedule because we already knew those cream puffs existed. But we go to the conference schedule. They open against Rutgers. And of course, the Scarlet Knights gave Michigan a good run 2 years ago at Michigan, only lost by a touchdown. And they also gave them a good first half at Rutgers this past season. Greg Schiano, I was impressed with his initial burst there at Rutgers. It's starting to stall. Their offense is completely atrocious and anemic. Back-to-back visits to Nebraska and Minnesota could be a bit tricky for the Wolverines. Interesting there. Indiana at home, Michigan State on the road. Of course, they lost at Sparty 2 years ago. And then they've got the bye week before a Big Ten championship rematch against Purdue. They go to Penn State. They go to Maryland back-to-back. And they've got Ohio State. So the stretch drive is nothing to sneeze at. Going to Penn State, going to Maryland, playing Ohio State. Let's look at the non-division games. Purdue, Minnesota, Nebraska. That's a fairly difficult draw. They didn't get Northwestern, for example. But, of course, it's difficult to predict who's going to be good out of the West. It appears as though Northwestern's going to be awful. Nebraska is a bit of a wild card, but until proven otherwise, they're going to be bad. And the other 5 teams are about the same in quality. And Purdue is probably going to take a step back. They lost a ton of offensive talent. Charlie Jones, Durham, the tight end, and, of course, Aiden O'Connell, a quarterback. So we would expect Purdue's going to take a step back. The other 4 are going to be strong and maybe even better at Wisconsin and Nebraska. But that's a difficult run of 3 games at the end of the season for Michigan. And there's the Wolverines' schedule. All right, let's go to our next. I think we had a super chat that I missed. Did we not? My bad. Erica, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Appreciate that so much. Erica's got a great question here. Hi, Mark. Out of curiosity, why can't Iowa get 5-star defensive players? Clearly, we always end up okay on D regardless, but it still sort of surprises me. Let's forget NIL for a second. Let's forget the new world we're in because we've only been dealing with this. Really, this is the first full recruiting cycle where we're really hearing about this being a factor. And Erica is alluding more to look at the past. Very few 5 defense. Xavier Wampa, the safety, of course, is an exception. But besides him, I wonder when the last time Iowa signed a 5-star defensive player. Well, first and foremost, there are very few in the region. So Iowa pretty much recruits in the region. Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana. That's the recruiting footprint for Iowa. Excuse me. And when the Hawkeyes do go to Florida and Texas, they're down there getting the kind of players, and especially Texas. I don't know that I was getting a whole lot of players out of Florida, but they're getting the third, fourth level of player that's not going to Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, LSU. And that's just the way it is, because if you grow up as one of the and develop as one of the best defensive players, let's say in the country, and you're in Texas, just Iowa's not on your radar in any such way is the best way I can, regardless of the reputation and the reality of developing these players into a first-rate defense. And Iowa, let's understand that the Hawkeyes currently have produced the 6th most NFL players. Think about that. The 6th most NFL players are Iowa products. That's astounding, because you would expect, and this roughly holds true, that if you looked at, okay, Alabama's got the most, Ohio State's got the second most, whoever's third, Clemson, LSU, somebody like that, that these are the best programs in the country. It's roughly close. But Iowa, of course, is more like a top 20 to 25 program, but has produced the 6th most NFL players. I don't know what exactly that tells me, besides I don't believe that they produce the volume of players necessary to win at a high level, elite level. Plus, of course, Erica, broken record here. Erica joins us on the Iowa channel with Corey each Tuesday. The offense is so horrible, there's no way to win 10 and 11 games on a regular basis with an offense that's one of the worst in the country. That's just an unbelievable situation there. It is just incredible. And a few people requested that Steve Dace and myself debate that or take that to the table in looking at what's going on at Iowa. And I'm not going to get into it right here, but it's just unlike any other program in the country. It is unlike any other program in the country where you've got this complete dichotomy of two units. Now, this happens anywhere else in the country in a given year. Of course, if you have already a really good defense and you've got a kind of a marginal offense, and then let's say the offense is underdeveloped, and let's say your two of your best offensive linemen get hurt, and there's a number of things that break the wrong way on one side of the ball and break right on the other side of the ball, then you've got this disparity of performance in a given year that can always be expected for any team. However, Iowa, it's every year. Top 5 defense, bottom 5 to 10 to 15 offense. Every year. How that doesn't get corrected or addressed, it's difficult to correct. It's easy to address, to at least acknowledge and then address it, and acknowledge and be aware and understand that that's a problem. I've likened it to having a company where, let's say you've got a company and you've got a accounting division, you've got a sales division, and let's say you have a technology division, and your technology and your accounting is phenomenal. They're great. They're phenomenal. Two of the just amazing units that could be put together. But your sales division is horrible. So you can't sell your product, and you're floundering and you're failing because you have this great product and you have this airtight system otherwise, but nobody can sell the product. Well, you got a problem. And that's what Iowa's got. They got 2 units consistently that are great, and one that completely is, it's indescribably bad. I've run out of terminology to place on the Iowa offense and how incredibly pathetic it is. All right. So we just ran down the Michigan schedule, and again, I will post the link in the comment section so you can join the show if you like. Let's see. We went from Michigan. Let's go to Indiana. Let's look at this Indiana schedule. The Hoosiers open on a Saturday at home against Ohio State. So a rare conference opener for the Hoosiers. We will all remember that in 2017, Indiana and Ohio State opened on a Thursday night in Bloomington, and the Buckeyes were challenged into the third quarter, and then J.K. Dobbins went wild, and the Buckeyes routed Indiana. So anyway, Indiana takes on Ohio State, so right into the Big Ten waters, right out of the gate. Then they've got 3 non-conference games. Interesting in that we've got Indiana State, not interesting there, but Louisville. So Indiana will do this from time to time where they and or Purdue will play I'm putting the air quotes up, big non-conference game at Lucas Oil Stadium. And they do it here, and they do it against typically a regional team like Louisville or Kentucky. Mostly it's been Louisville a lot. They played Purdue there in Indianapolis a couple of years ago. So Louisville taking on Indiana, really good game, interesting game. I really enjoy seeing. So we're going to talk all off season a lot about Ohio State and Notre Dame and Alabama, Texas, and USC and Notre Dame, and all the enormous non-conference games that we all that grab our attention. I really love, and I will put out a video that I will go through I will post my top 10 non-conference games, but I will also post a video that will be the under the radar non-conference games. Like there's one we will see coming up, and I'll highlight it when we get to this team that I love this non-conference game. And I will highlight it in just a second when we get to this team. But sticking with the Hoosiers here again, Louisville taking on new coach Jeff Brom. So they are certainly familiar with Jeff Brom for the old Oaken Bucket game, taking on the Cardinals there. Then they've got Akron at home. So probably 2-2 at that point in the season, going to Maryland, off week before Michigan. So that bye week placed at a good point, although they're going to be a heavy underdog at the big house. Then they've got Rutgers, got to win that game if you're Indiana. They go to Penn State. They usually give the Nittany Lions fits, usually. Wisconsin, Illinois. So a difficult draw for Indiana, unfortunately for them, out of the Big Ten Western Division, as they've got to play Wisconsin, Illinois on the road, and Purdue on the road. Also understand with the Big Ten schedule that you've got 9 games. Therefore, the conference has to make a scheduling decision on which teams get to play 5 at home and 4 on the road versus 4 at home and 5 on the road. And they alternate that, so they do make it fair over time. But for any particular season, that's an advantage or a disadvantage that you have to play 5 road games or you get to play 5 home games. But look at that stretch drive for the Hoosiers. Boy, they better rack up some wins. They better get 2 out of 4 out of the gate. And then I don't know where they're picking wins up. Rutgers should be a win, but certainly not a guarantee. And maybe they beat Michigan State this past year in overtime, and they won at Purdue, or they did not win at Purdue, but Purdue is probably going to take a step back. But look at this closing run. The last 6 games of the season, they've got Michigan, they got Penn State, Wisconsin, Illinois. They've got Michigan State and Purdue. Difficult stretch drive for Indiana football. All right, next up, who do we go to? How about the mighty Scarlet Knights of Rutgers? Do you see my strategy, my programming strategy coming into play here, my producer skills? I'm going with the crappy teams first, so you'll hang around for the big boys. We got Rutgers. Of course, they are not going to lose that April 29th spring game that we all look forward to. I will do a special live stream following the Rutgers spring game. All right, Northwestern out of the gate. So right out of the gate, we've got a Big Ten heavyweight matchup. Northwestern, who is now officially the worst team in the Power 5. They played the worst of anybody in the Power 5. Even Colorado was probably better. That's a close call. Because Colorado played really good non-conference teams like TCU and Air Force, and Northwestern played Duke, but just the bottom line is, yeah, Northwestern sucks. They're horrible. I don't know what's going on with Pat Fitzgerald. Temple's, of course, a non-conference game, but not necessarily a runaway for a Rutgers team that I think beat Temple by 1 point last year, something like that. Or was that the year before? They got Virginia Tech. Interesting game. So Rutgers got one on the board for the Big Ten against the ACC last year in defeating Boston College. This time they host Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech's not a good football team. They've got a bad roster. All right. Big Ten play September 23rd at Michigan. Wagner. There's a game that you will only see Rutgers out of the Big Ten play. They play the mighty Seahawks of Wagner. So at this point in the season, they've got to be 3-2, if not 4-1. Because then after that, aside from Indiana on the road, who are they beating? They've got Wisconsin. They also have to play out of the Big Ten Western Division, Wisconsin, Northwestern, and Iowa on the road. Check out the Rutgers-Iowa box scores since Rutgers joined the Big Ten. They basically can't get a first down against Iowa. And that closing run for poor Rutgers, this is Rutgers football every year. Well, every year under Schiano. Every year before that, under Asher, they were just terrible against everyone. But now they're at least beating bad teams, some bad non-conference teams. And then they get in the Big Ten and they pretty much try to find a win to get bowl eligible. And they fell too short this year at 4-8. But that closing run for Rutgers, ouch. Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State, and Maryland. Forget it. All right. That's the Rutgers look. Malachi thinks Rutgers should go back to the American Conference. Well, they were in the Big East, yes, which is now kind of, in a sense, the old, well, it's not really. But anyway, get your point. All right. Any interesting comments? D-Lob 2010, Indiana is the SEC equivalent of, well, Vanderbilt would be the first one that come to mind from a quality standpoint, but I don't think that that's really, yeah, Indiana. If you look historically, and I'm not going back to the 1890s, I'm going back to, just in the last 5 or 6 decades, Indiana is one of the worst football programs in the country. So is Vanderbilt, of course. Oregon State is. Well, Kansas State pre-1990, pre-Bill Snyder, was beyond horrendous. But yes, Indiana is one of just the least performing programs in the history of college football. It's just, and Tom Allen lifted that program for a couple of years, 8-5. Probably they should have been 9-4. They had a 2-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter of their Gator Bowl game against Tennessee. They blew that. And of course, then they had the big COVID year where they almost beat Ohio State, almost went to the Big Ten championship game, and played Ole Miss in the Outback Bowl and finished in the top 15 in the country. But the last 2 seasons, boy, I don't know. Tom Allen might be on his way out. Although he's been recruiting well for Indiana level. All right, let's stay in the Big Ten Eastern Division. Let's go to Maryland. Oh, yeah. I said that Rutgers was the only team in the Big Ten that scheduled these kind of games. Maryland does this too. Towson. Okay, so the FCS game there, Maryland likes to do that. And, of course, Towson's very close, so there is a connection there. Charlotte, don't really understand why that needs to be played. Virginia is the ACC game. And so understand that the Big Ten went 7-5 in bowl play. That included the college football playoff, the two losses, and also understand that, man, if you look at quality of play, Penn State won the Rose Bowl easily, smashed Utah, had a 3-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter. Minnesota won a bowl game, Wisconsin won a bowl game. Illinois lost on the last play of the game. Ohio State lost on the last play of the game. So the Big Ten had a quality bowl season. Really should have been 9-3. Didn't get it done. They go 7-5. Their non-conference showing, though, in the regular season was pretty bad. Not horrible. They just didn't play that many meaningful games. Ohio State beat Notre Dame. But when Michigan and Maryland don't play anyone in the Power Five, it's tough to get a handle on how well the conference did, non-conference. But, Iowa lost to Iowa State. That's not a good look. And just not many good wins. The conference went, what was the final tally? 12-11 against the Power Five. All right. So anyway, it brings to mind this matchup. Maryland, the last 2 years, has had bowl victories against the ACC. Virginia Tech, they crushed them 2 years ago. And of course, they nipped North Carolina State. So we've got another Maryland. Obviously, they spent forever in the ACC, going back to, I think, the 1940s or 50s. So they should probably schedule non-conference games. It's an interesting, and it's in the region. Good for recruiting. Virginia's a great recruiting state. And of course, Maryland's right there in the DMV. So they got Virginia. Virginia played Illinois the last 2 years, got blown out last year. All right. Then Maryland goes into Big Ten play. They've got Michigan State. They usually lose to them, but of course beat Sparty and Mel Tucker this past year, Indiana. So Maryland could get off to a 5-0, probably should be 5-0. Maryland should be 5-0 when they go to Columbus. Take on the Buckeyes. They regularly get smashed by Ohio State. What was the score this past year? It was like 66-17 2 years ago. Oh, no. They played the Buckeyes tough this past year. That was a close game. They lost by 13, but close game. And of course, they played them close in 2018. So most of the time they lose by 50, but they have on occasion played Ohio State close. And of course, Maryland, Mike Loxley is making some strides. Illinois, that's a big game. That's an interesting game. Well-matched teams. Who knows what's going to happen there? That's a coin flip game. Bye week, they go to Northwestern, got to win that game. Closing drive against Penn State, one of those old Eastern Bloc rivalry games at Nebraska, Michigan, Rutgers. So Maryland plays Nebraska, Northwestern, and Illinois out of the Big Ten Western Division. So not a difficult draw for the Terps. All right, let's move it on to our next team out of the Big Ten Eastern Division. Let's go with Penn State. No, let's go with Sparty. Let's go with Michigan State. Mel Tucker takes over for Mark Antonio, goes 2-5. Does beat Michigan. Then, of course, has the breakout season with Kenneth Walker at tailback. They win the Peach Bowl. They finish in the top 10. They go 11-2. And then last year, this team was awful. They basically had 2 receivers and a quarterback. Yeah, otherwise, just Michigan State was terrible. They basically had Peyton Thorne and a couple really good receivers. Keon Coleman. And I get them mixed up because Naylor, I believe, went to the NFL. No, Jaden Reed went to the NFL. One of them stayed. One of them went. Good tight end. The offensive line was terrible. They had no running backs. They had no defense. Just especially the rush defense was strong. So Mel Tucker needs to prove something. This guy got a contract extension because he had one good year. So anyway, here we go. Central Michigan, Richmond, those have to be wins, of course. All right, Washington comes to town. And if you watch that game last year, Michigan State lost on the scoreboard by 11 points. They got annihilated. They got completely dominated, and they threw up some cosmetic points late to make it look good. All right. The key games for Michigan State to try to get back to bowl play, of course, Maryland, they've got to win that game, you would think, because they're probably going to be 2-1. Washington's really good. At Iowa, I like that game. There's an old Big Ten matchup right there. Michigan State going to Iowa. Then off the bye, they shouldn't need the bye to prepare for Rutgers, but got to win that game, of course. Then the next 4 weeks are pretty difficult. Michigan at Minnesota, and they got pasted by the Golden Gophers last year, like 34-7. Nebraska is a game that Michigan State won 2 years ago at home. In overtime, they've got the Huskers at home. They go to play Ohio State. They've gotten buried. Mel Tucker's had an awful time with Ohio State. At Indiana, that was a game Michigan State led by 3 touchdowns, and they lost against Indiana. And I'm blanking on who Indiana is going to have at quarterback this year. Shoot, I just looked at that the other day. They lose Connor Baslick. I don't believe. Somebody help me on Indiana's quarterback situation. I'm going to kick myself. Jack Tuttle transferred to Michigan. Then, of course, Michigan State plays Penn State to close out the season, as they always do. The Big Ten Western Division draw for Michigan State is Minnesota, Nebraska, and, of course, this game against Iowa. That's a difficult draw. Iowa and Minnesota on the road for Michigan State. Ouch. Oh, super chat. Thank you, Erica. Maryland is playing at home almost the whole season. I didn't really notice that, but Maryland is good at playing. They're really good, Erica and everyone else. They're really good at playing the NC State role of they're just trying to eke together a 6-win season to get to a bowl game. Now, we're going to expect Maryland going forward to be better than that. They should be better than that. They've won 2 consecutive bowl games now. They went 8-5, 7-6 the year before. Now they don't have to do what NC State does and schedule Old Dominion and Liberty and William and Mary to get to a bowl game. But that's what Maryland does. Yes, they hardly ever play anyone. Yeah, they sit at home, but they do have the Virginia game. But yeah, they didn't play anyone in the Power 5 non-conference last year and got to a bowl game. So we expect more out of Maryland going forward. Now let's look at the Penn State schedule. Let's go to the big boys in the Big Ten Eastern Division. After the fine blue and white game on April 15th, tax day, you've got West Virginia. So old timers, you're going to love this one. West Virginia, Penn State. That's an old rivalry that never gets played. Probably has not been played since 1992, I would guess, with Penn State playing in the Big Ten starting in 93. I don't think they played West Virginia since then. I don't think. Go to Wikipedia and check me out on that. Then they play the guys with the winged helmets, not Michigan, Delaware. And their other non-conference game is UMass later in the season. So not exactly a murderer's row for Penn State. They did schedule Auburn the last 2 years. And Auburn is usually roughly a top 15 team. But Penn State lucked out and got a couple bad Auburn teams to play. West Virginia was lousy last year. Probably the worst team in the Big 12. At Illinois, of course, Penn State lost the 9 overtime game the last time they faced Brett Bielema's crew. So that's a difficult first Big Ten game. Then Iowa. So back-to-back, Illinois, Iowa for Penn State. At Northwestern, mark that down as a win. Come off the bye and play UMass. So it's basically 3 byes in a row for Penn State. Northwestern, the actual bye, and then UMass. I don't know which is more difficult. Probably the players would say the most difficult would be the bye week because they have to practice against each other. All right, then things get serious. Going to Columbus on October 21st for a titanic matchup. One of the three biggest games in the conference, Penn State, Ohio State at the Shoe. Indiana at Maryland, Michigan, Rutgers, Michigan State. Don't see anything out of the ordinary there as they play all Big Ten Eastern Division teams down the stretch after playing the three Western Division teams out of the gate. But again, Penn State with a fairly difficult draw out of the West with the two possible best teams. All right. Now, yes, of course, Brett, you're right. Maryland on the road is a sneaky, difficult game for everyone, but especially Penn State. They dropped that game against Maryland 2 years ago. Tony, thank you for that. Yes, we want to give equal time to the Maryland side there. So let's understand that, yes, I was picking on Maryland a little bit, but in roughly like 2016, 17, 18, in that range, they played a home and home with Texas and beat them both times. Yes, they played at RFK Stadium or whatever they call that new Washington Stadium the Redskins play in. They played there, and then they had to play in Austin the year before, and they pulled off 2 upsets. And they were pretty resounding upsets, too. They whipped Texas. Good call there, Tony. Appreciate that. All right. Let's go to, we looked at Michigan. So to round out the East, we go look at Ohio State's schedule. And again, as we noted when we looked at IU's schedule, they play on the road against Indiana to open up the Big Ten, which is unusual. Kind of unusual that they play their big non-conference game in week 4 at Notre Dame after 2 warm-ups against Youngstown State. This is the only FCS you're going to see Ohio State play, and there's an obvious connection there with Jim Tressel. Western Kentucky, the Hilltoppers, are a respectable group of 5 team. Off week after Notre Dame, pretty well placed because Maryland won't be a cakewalk at home. Purdue on the road, Penn State. Okay, Penn State and Wisconsin back-to-back, especially, let's say, Ohio State, regardless of the outcome, whether it's a disappointing loss or it's a huge win, then go to Camp Randall the next Saturday. And so that's got like big noon kickoff written all over it, going to Camp Randall the next Saturday, or it could be an ABC primetime game. So difficult back-to-back for the Buckeyes there. They should be able to handle that early November section, although Minnesota at home is not a cakewalk. Don't know what to think of Minnesota exactly. Going to do, obviously, the personnel dive into Minnesota, but they lose Tanner Morgan. But I actually think the backup quarterback, Kelly McManus, is a better thrower and will be a better quarterback. They lose, of course, one of the best backs in the history of the program and the Big Ten, and Mo Ibrahim. And then, of course, the vaunted trip to Michigan, where the Buckeyes will look to not lose 3 consecutive games for the first time since 1997, when they lost to the Wolverines in 1995, 6-7. Costing them a shot at the national championship all 3 of those seasons. They were either ranked 1, 2, 3, or 4 and lost to the Wolverines 3 consecutive games. So there we go. Ohio State, Michigan, of course, just the TV rating on that game was a playoff. Vaunted trip. Yes, dependent fanatic. Vaunted. All right, let's go to the West, the better of the 2 divisions, of course. Let's start with Northwestern. No, we don't have Northwestern on the board, so we'll just grab Minnesota. The Gophers is PJ Fleck. He's done a nice job at Minnesota, but he has yet to win the division. Great bowl record. He wins all his bowl games. I think he's won every bowl game. They beat Georgia Tech. They beat Auburn. They beat West Virginia. They beat whoever they played this past season, Syracuse. Yeah, and there's somebody else in there. 2018, 19, 20, 20. Yeah, they missed a bowl game in 2020. So he's 4-0 in bowl games. Anyway, they just finished a 9-4 season. So if you look at the last 3 regular seasons minus the COVID year, the last 3 full seasons, Minnesota's 11-2, 9-4, 9-4. But they have yet to win the West. And this, of course, is going to be the last year of divisions. Okay, I said it. Okay, let's first get to this August 31st. So note the dates. This is intriguing. So we are going to have a really nice little matchup with Nebraska and Minnesota. Yes, Tony, I did say that Minnesota beat Auburn. Anyway, look at this. This is a week 1 matchup on a Thursday night. I love this. So the Big Ten is smart in doing this because they get the Fox cameras out there and they do it up big on a Thursday night, and they really aren't, ESPN will have another big game. So last year it was Penn State Purdue on Fox, and it was West Virginia Pitt on ESPN. So you get 2, and then there's some other group of 5 games going on, but basically 2 big matchups on the Thursday night to open the season. And it's a huge game. It's a big game right out of the gate, and Minnesota has dominated Nebraska in recent years. Eastern Michigan. Okay, this is what I love. This is when I went love, 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 love. About 20 minutes ago, this is the game I was thinking of. All these other big matchups we'll be talking about. Love this game. Love this matchup. September 16th, Minnesota at North Carolina. Drake May hosting the Gophers, who fielded one of the best defenses in the country last year. This is a really good matchup. Love it. Okay, back into Big Ten play with Northwestern, Louisiana. So Minnesota in recent years, really under PJ Fleck, they had a home and home with Colorado, and of course, they couldn't help that the Buffs were just beyond awful. So they haven't really played anybody with a pulse outside the conference. They have played some of the lousiest teams imaginable. So it's great to see Minnesota and North Carolina. All right, let's get to Big Ten play. They would have already played Nebraska and Northwestern. And Nebraska at home at Rhule's first game on the road. You got to think Minnesota's going to have a nice advantage there. Michigan at home. Love that game. Bye week before going to Iowa, and you Hawkeye fans and Minnesota fans will note that Iowa has manhandled Minnesota for years. And this has been PJ Fleck's bugaboo right here, trying to beat the Hawkeyes. And they had the game last year. They had 3 trips inside the red zone in the fourth quarter last year and coughed it up every time. So they go to Iowa. That's going to be a huge game. Michigan State, Illinois. So again, anytime Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, and Iowa get together this year, it's a huge game in the West. And it's a huge game considering the ramifications long-term of having the divisions blown up and USC and UCLA coming in and maybe having the last chance to get to a Big Ten championship game. That closing run is not necessarily easy. After Michigan State, Illinois at Purdue, and even though we expect the Boilers to be down, it's on the road before going to Ohio State and Wisconsin. So Minnesota has been fortunate with some of its Eastern Division draws in recent years, but this year it's Ohio State and Michigan. Yikes. All right, folks, let's continue with the Big Ten Western Division. Has anybody sent anything in we need to see? All right, let's go to, how about Illinois? Here come the Fighting Illini under Brett Bielema, of course, coming off that 8-5 season. That could have been so much better. They started 7-1. Also, keep in mind that they took Michigan to the wire, and if they would have time managed that game better in the last 4 minutes, probably should have won the game. And thus they blew the division. They were the best team in the division, I believe, last year. They beat Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa head-to-head. All right, here we go. Toledo at home at Kansas. So I like this game, much like the Minnesota-North Carolina game, but not to that degree. I love this Illinois-Kansas game. It's kind of a regional game. Nice little matchup. Penn State is the Big Ten opener. Then they drop back out of conference to take on Florida Atlantic. All right. Then comes, I don't want to call it a gauntlet by any stretch, but facing teams with pulses every week. So no more letdowns. Purdue, Nebraska, Maryland, Wisconsin. So the trip to Maryland is going to be key for this Illinois team. Then off the bye week, going to Minnesota, Indiana. So they catch a bit of a break, although they lost to the Hoosiers last year in a game that they should have won. There's another game they should have won. They go to Iowa, enormous game. And then, of course, the typical rivalry game and taking on the Wildcats of Northwestern. They have buried them the last few years. All right, let's go to Northwestern. Here is the most inconsequential schedule in the Big Ten. Well, you know what? I'll say Rutgers, because there's no way that they could possibly compete in the East. But, there is a slim chance, because Pat Fitzgerald has done it many times, that they could find themselves in the thick of things. But they are going to have to get so much better, because they're 4-20 in their last 24 games. 4-20. They lost to Miami of Ohio. They lost to somebody called Eastern or Southern Illinois. Okay, they go to Rutgers. Again, scintillating game. If you want to relive 1963 or 1971, pick your year, at least 50 years ago, there's your game. Northwestern at Rutgers. Okay, UTEP, don't lose that one, Pat Fitzgerald, but something tells me it's a possibility. For some reason, I don't know if they're trying to become the USC Notre Dame of the collegial ranks, but Northwestern and Duke just play all the time. Go through the years. They just get, it's not like the typical, okay, let's schedule a series home and home. No, they've played like 8 years in a row. And Northwestern fumbled going. So for as good as Duke was last year and as awful as Northwestern was, they could have beaten Duke. Their best running back, Evan Hull, yes, he fumbled going into the end zone to tie the game. Well, they needed the 2-point conversion. They lost by 8. So anyway, they go to Duke. They're going to be a pretty substantial underdog there. So they really need to be 2-1. They've got, so forget it after this, except for this Howard Bison game. So I'm now going to put Northwestern, of course, into the ranks with Rutgers and Maryland in scheduling these schools that we've never heard of. They've got a game against Howard. Okay. Other than that Duke, Minnesota, Penn State stretch, that's pretty bad. Come off the bye, go to Nebraska. They used to have a great series with Nebraska. Well, they did beat Nebraska, of course, last year. I was going to say 2 years ago, they lost by like 7 touchdowns, but they beat the Huskers last year. So Northwestern had the dubious distinction of winning a game in August to, hey, officially in the power rankings of the Big Ten, be number 1 in the Big Ten, but lose every other game, lose 11 straight, and win its game outside the continental USA. At Nebraska, Maryland, Iowa, does it really matter? I've got no faith in this program now. This used to be one of my pet programs, Pat Fitzgerald and company, but just, man, who are they going to beat? Maybe they beat someone like, in conference? Wow. They go to Rutgers. They could win that game. maybe Purdue. Yeah, it's awful. It's awful. All right. Next up, who have we not looked at? Purdue. Let's go to the Boilers. The defending Big Ten Western Division champions. Something that will not be able to be stated going forward because of the big blow up in divisions. Okay, Fresno State. So there's a nice little game. Fresno State, who, of course, took Oregon State to the wire. They beat Washington State in a bowl game. This is not an easy game for Purdue, playing Fresno State at home. Then they go to Virginia. Okay. So new head coach Ryan Walters is in a difficult spot here. He's not exactly playing Alabama, Oklahoma, and USC the first 3 weeks of the season, but this is a difficult non-conference schedule. Again, not that any one of them are giant killers, but they're all capable. Like there's no Howard, there's no Charlotte, there's no what we see out of everybody else playing these completely lousy teams, Youngstown State and Western Kentucky and etc. Purdue's playing. I don't get that schedule. I like it, but Purdue should not do that. Play somebody really good or just play the Syracuse game. So the Syracuse-Purdue game, if you watch that game, that was one of the most entertaining fourth quarters of any game last year. If you look at Purdue, oh my word, they could be 0-7. What do you think, folks? Yes, the real MVP. Virginia Tech might be Purdue's easiest non-conference opponent. It might be their easiest opponent, period, except for playing Northwestern. Northwestern's worse. But, and again, I'm going to remind everyone, even though this is a topic for another show that's upcoming, keep this in mind, everyone. Keep this in mind. I saw 3 and 4 start there. I don't really know if they're going to do that. 3 and 4. I'm trying to get that. Keep this in mind, everyone. We all tend to look at these teams and not think much is going to change. If you're a 7-5 team, you're going to be a 7-5 team next year. Maybe you'll go 8-4. Maybe you'll go 6-6. But we just always tend. It's just human nature not to be able to envision something different. Meaning, this 6-6 team could be 10-2 next year. But we are going to be asking you, and we're going to participate, of course, ourselves into who are going to be the big breakout teams. This happens every year. I know that everybody thinks that this TCU situation was like one in a lifetime. Well, in a way it was, because we've never seen a 5-7 team then go to the playoff and go 12-0 in the regular season. But there are 65 teams in the Power 5. And let's make, I came up with this designation myself, so blame me, but I think that this is reasonable. I consider a 3-game change in your win-loss total to be significant. Whether you increase by 3 or decrease by 3, that's significant. So think about it. A 9-3 team becomes a 12-0 team, or a 9-3 team becomes a 6-6 team. 2 games, I set 3 as the standard of that being a significant change in quality of performance from one year to another. And I often ask this question, and I looked at it. I haven't looked at it for this season yet, between 2021 and 22, to see how many teams took that kind of jump or that kind of decline. But you would be surprised, because I always thought 5 teams in the country have that much of a change from year to year. Do you know what the numbers are? It's usually about 20 teams. Do you think you can find 20 teams in the country, in the Power 5, that are going to have that much of a jump or decline. And the reason I bring that up is because I'm looking at Purdue going 8-4 last year, and I'm looking at a team that's probably, David Green Shield 5-7. I don't know if they're going to go 5-7. I think they might be 0-7. Now, most likely they're going to win one of those games. But don't be surprised if Purdue starts 0-7. And then I didn't even look at their next. Oh, hey, well, there's the next 3-6. Yeah, there's the 7th one. Yeah, before the bye. 0-7. I will put the over under at 1.5. Okay, then we've got. That's not particularly easy coming out of the bye. As we give advertising time to Buffalo Wild Wings that should be sponsoring us. Okay, at Nebraska, at Michigan, which is a big reminder for everyone out there. If you've got a connection to a sponsor, whether you own a business or you know somebody who owns a business, please knock on my door, hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. We can work with you. We've got very affordable prices. I can let you know exactly how many people we reach. Over 1 million a month. So anyway, 1 million views per month on all the channels. Look at that. 0-7. Then after the bye, they go to Nebraska and go to Michigan. And they've got Minnesota at Northwestern, Indiana. I'm not seeing 5 wins myself. I'm seeing like 3. But maybe I'm just a little bit down. I just think Jeff Brom gone. Aiden O'Connell gone. Yeah, 3-9 for Purdue. Yeah. Jason, I guess, is not thinking that Fresno State can beat Purdue. Mark's in his own world. I really don't know what that means. I think you're all here with me, I believe. All right, that's Purdue. Who else? Nebraska. We've not hit. We got 3 teams left, I believe. The Huskers with Matt Rhule at the helm. Right out of the gate, big game at Minnesota. Then at Colorado and Coach Deion Sanders. That game is going to be a hyped game. And, it's just going to be fascinating to watch Deion Sanders at Colorado. For as much as I try to downplay things like that he personally doesn't really, I've got nothing against him, but he doesn't personally interest me. Like he doesn't fascinate me like he does a number of people. It's an interesting situation. Awful program, 1-11. He's bringing in all this talent, both through the transfer portal and recruiting. And oh my goodness, it seems like every top defensive back in the country, every cornerback puts Colorado in their top 5 now. Anyway, Nebraska plays NIU, Louisiana Tech. They should be 3-1 at that point. Could be 4-0. Michigan, Illinois is a tough back-to-back. Northwestern after the bye, got to win that game. Got to beat Purdue as well. So they could get on a bit of a roll here. Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State, possibly. Maryland will not be easy. And then the final 2 games of the season, unless things change dramatically, they'll be a substantial underdog, although they ended a 8-game losing streak to Iowa this past season, winning that game. And, of course, that's on Black Friday. So Nebraska has to face Michigan State, and Maryland. That's a pretty tough draw out of the East. David, I said the same thing. I was looking at 6-6 the other night. I was asked about Nebraska's forecast, and I was asked, Jake Hayner's gone. Yes, zone 6. I understand that. But you know what? These teams actually come up with a different quarterback. They actually replace these guys. All right, Wisconsin, Luke Fickell. I may be putting too much on Luke Fickell this year to really step up and do something with this team right out of the gate. Maybe I'm fooling myself, but I'm expecting it to a degree, not like 12-0, but Buffalo out of the gate at Washington State. Of course, the Badgers dominated that game statistically, but blew the game, lost to Washington State. Georgia Southern, so those are the 3 non-conference games. I'd call the Washington State game on the road as a toss-up. Got to win the other 2, then go to Purdue to open up Big Ten play. Then got an off week. Start October against Rutgers. Iowa's, of course, an enormous game. These are the 2 best programs in the conference right now. At Illinois, Ohio State. That's a tough 3-game stretch. Iowa, Illinois, and Ohio State. Go to Indiana, take on Northwestern, Nebraska, and Minnesota. So out of the Eastern Division, they've got to battle Ohio State, Rutgers, and Indiana. So that's not bad. Ohio State at home, that place is going to be rocking for that game. Let's say they get off to a 3-0. Let's say they're 5-0, 6-0. Then they trip up. Well, let's say they're 6-2 when they play Ohio State. All right, that's the deal for Wisconsin. Now we wrap up with the Hawkeyes of Iowa. It's unfortunate because this team has a prolific offense, one of the most exciting in college football, but they just cannot get it together on defense. They're atrocious on the defensive side of the ball. Can't stop anyone. Just horrendous. But the offense is amazing. Erica's planning a trip to Madison. Erica, if you do that, we may want you to turn your phone on and give us a report. All right, Iowa, here we go. Utah State, the Aggies could be, they could be a little pesky. At Iowa State, Iowa's won that game a million years in a row, but then they lost 10-7. Of course, Iowa lost 10-7. Western Michigan. All right, at Penn State against one of the best teams in the country, we believe. Michigan State, Purdue, at Wisconsin, Minnesota. That's not an easy stretch. Then they got the bye week before Northwestern. Iowa will most likely make the Northwestern game close. And then they got Rutgers. So between those 2 games, Iowa's defense will probably give up 3 points and about 29 yards of total offense. Then the slugfest against Illinois. They've got the Illini at Kinnick. They went to Champaign last year and they lost a tough 9-6 game. They go to Nebraska again. They lost that game for the first time in forever against the Huskers. They were down 24-0. Came back to make it close, but lost by a touchdown. So Rutgers, Michigan State, Penn State, not a bad draw, but of course, again, a trip to Happy Valley. So they should win the first 3 games of the year. Although, of course, the big Cy-Hawk Trophy game is always difficult. Let's say they lose to Penn State. They should win the next 2. Let's say they lose at Wisconsin. Or split Wisconsin, Minnesota in some fashion. They've got 2 losses at that point. They've got Illinois at home. Northwestern, Rutgers, Nebraska. Is Iowa going to go 10-2? Are they going to go 10-2? They could go 10-2 and average 17 points per game. And only because they put up a bunch of points against Western Michigan and somebody else. There it is, folks. Our enormous Big Ten schedule preview, breakdown. I know that the schedule's been out forever. But again, we had some requests since it's been out since mid-season, so we weren't going to address it then since we had so much to talk about during the season. And we've been going through all these various conference breakdowns with the ACC and the Big 12 coming out this past week. I see we got about 100 folks on the line, and I'm forgetting that I have simulcasted this all over the place. So not much of a crowd tonight, but we appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football as we're on the Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, Penn State, and Nebraska channels in addition to the main channel. So thank you so much for being here, and that's all I got. I wanted to run through the Big Ten schedule, and thank you so much for the phone calls. We appreciate you being here. Let's see. Next up, in terms of our next live, is definitely going to be Monday. So get this. I want you all to be here. This is going to be fun. We've got Tony showing up. Tony Altamore, our resident expert on all that is basically evaluating these schools, evaluating their financial situation, their academic situation, their athletic situation, their cultural situation and values, and also their brand in the marketplace, their TV market itself, and putting all that together. And really, in this day and age of expansion and realignment and all the rumors that are out there, this would have just been a fun exercise 30 years ago, for the most part, even though Penn State left to go to the Big Ten, let's say. But for the most part, 30 years ago, this would have just been a fun exercise. But now it's really looking at what these schools have to offer as value, as commodities for these various conferences. And so what is likely, what is the Big Ten looking at? We just think football, and then some of us think money and brand and TV market, but there's a lot more that goes into it, especially certain conferences, let's say, are still more academic minded. And the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are certainly two of those, and the ACC as well, not discounting the Big 12. They have remarkable schools in the SEC, but certainly there are standards that are obvious to all of us and well stated and documented in the other conferences in how they evaluate those other schools and football programs. So again, what are we going to call this? Like conference expansion and realignment. Realignment. This is when I need a producer. Realignment live with Tony Altamore. Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. There you go. Conference expansion and realignment talk live with Tony Altamore coming up Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Then, of course, also on Monday, we've got our USC live show with Matt Zemek, the one and only Matt Zemek from Trojans Wire. We always have a great time with Matt. Great stuff out of all of you here at the Voice of College Football. Also want to let you know, as the crowd is dwindling, this happens, of course, I'm wrapping up the show and everybody's like, oh, he's out of here. But always have important things to say at the end. One would be that we've got a get-together with Steve Dace from Michigan Podcast every Thursday. Now, I love talking football with Steve Dace. Absolutely. Sign me up for that every day. However, the reason we put that together is basically because practically every day I'd have people telling me, Mark, you should do a show with Steve Dace. Even though we do the segment on his Michigan Podcast every Tuesday, constantly people were telling me, you two need to get together like all the time. And so we put this together. However, let's understand this is the real world, and let's understand that people have to work and be compensated. Therefore, that show costs a certain amount of money. And believe it or not, I would like to be compensated for my time as well. But even putting that aside, just to cover the cost of the show, my thought process was, okay, how can we do this best? How would this be most interesting to everyone? And I thought, let's do it live instead of just Steve and I getting together each week and just recording. I thought this might be more interesting if people can actually ask questions and make comments, and we'll respond and we'll debate for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. And then we'll take comments and questions. And therefore, we are just in a place where we need to ramp that up in regards to it's hitting kind of strange. I'll be honest with everyone that when Steve and I get together, we had a run of records where we were getting 10, 20, up to 35,000 views on a video. And then while we've had this show and everybody seemed amped up about this, and the issue might be, and I see your question there, TJ Scott. The issue might be that we're going live. Maybe we shouldn't go live, because what happens is everybody joins late and it's only a half hour. So we're still getting people in the last 5 minutes. And of course, then we wrap up the show and that's it. And so it's only gotten like 2,000 to 4,000 views, and that's just not going to cut it. And it's not going to cover the costs based on the ad revenue. And if I can't get a sponsor for it, which I would love to do, unfortunately, I don't want to pull the plug on that show. So we're going to carry on through. Sometimes you have to work a deficit for a while and pour yourself into something, even though you're digging a hole just to see if it'll straighten itself out, and you can take off from there. So if you enjoy the conversation, bottom line here's your responsibility, is simply, if you enjoy the content that we produce, the weekly show with Steve Deace. There we go. David Greenshield. We need more quality Deace time. I'll not take offense to that, David. Less of Mark, more of Steve. But if you enjoy the show that we put together every Thursday live, then just do everything that you can to support it. That's all I'm going to say in any such way. So whether that's you just jump on and hit the like button, but if we put everybody together, I'm guessing that like I've got almost 40,000 people. How about Hooters as a sponsor? Yes, David, make that phone call, please. Go ahead and do it. Get us some. Yes, we could also have the ladies come on as well, which might help the viewership. But you're taking me off track here. Yeah. So anyway, yes, a sponsorship would be phenomenal. So anyway, yeah, hit the like button. And I would guess that I've got like a larger Twitter following than anybody that I'm talking to right this second, even though it's not that large. But you know what? All of you put together have a way bigger influence on social media than I do by myself. Between your Facebook and your Twitter and everything else and all the other stuff that I need to get into. I'm starting to put some reels on Instagram. Here's one for you. Follow me on Instagram. You'll find me at Voice of College Football. Thank you, Alan. Appreciate that. I'm starting to send reels because my daughter is a marketing and PR major. And what's better than her being a major in that is that she's actually been in the working world for going on 2 years now. And so she's actually making money and doing this the right way. And so she's made me proud. So she's out there and she said, Dad, people watch these reels on Instagram. You need to, not everybody wants to watch you for 3 hours. So, you need to put like these 45-second clips out there on Instagram. And so I've done that like 2 or 3 consecutive days. So we need to ramp up the Instagram following. So anybody that's listening to me right now, 79 people right now, and hopefully 80,000 will watch the show. Follow me on Instagram. I'm actually going to look this up. And folks, sometime in the next few weeks, what I'm also going to do in the next few weeks is we're going to do a non-college football show. We're going to do a State of the Channel show. And we're just going to talk about the channel. So follow me on Instagram. I'm dropping the link right there. Oh, you can see it right there. I just popped it up on the screen. So follow me on Instagram. And my daughter said Instagram doesn't even push pictures anymore on Instagram. It's all about reels because they're trying to compete with TikTok. I don't think I'm going to go the TikTok route quite yet. Don't see that happening. Shoelace Sooners here. Look at this. I think some feedback from users for future changes to the website would be good too, Mark. Feedback from users for future changes to the website. Oh, the website. Yes. And this guy right here is doing yeoman's work as we speak. So we're going to have a killer website here sometime. It's going to take a while. So don't expect it tomorrow. YouTube Shorts. Yes, I did a couple. And I need to do more of those. And yeah, I want to grab like a quick, interesting, like fun fact or a news story, just kind of my quick take. And that's what I should be hitting you all up with. Anytime you guys hit me up with something and say, why don't you do this or that? My response is typically like, yeah, I'm like working all the time anyway. So it's all about priorities. So some things are going to have to go. I actually believe like the way this is going to work best in the future is me producing less content. Too much content. I worked on a recruiting video and I posted it today. I liked it. I enjoyed working on it, putting it together. I thought it was good, but nobody watched it. So, ooh, that's a good idea right there to Rhule MVP. Look at that. How long are those shorts? They're like a minute, right? That's an idea. I like that idea. I think shorts have to be a minute. Huh. Maybe I'll redo all that. Maybe we're just going to flood the market with schedule previews on shorts. I like that. Oh, man, Connor's got another good one. Utilize poll fun. I got to write down the shorts, the schedules, previews on shorts. That's very cool. I think that might be an idea. Can I spit out a schedule preview in 1 minute? Utilize poll function on YouTube. Yeah, I don't really know. Oh, you mean on the community page or here on the chat? Can I do it like on the chat? I don't know how to do it. To Rhule. Here you go, to Rhule. When Rhule demands he didn't demand. He was very nice in asking for it. So here you go, Rhule. There's the link. It's coming up right there. And again, what you're looking at currently, everyone, is my Instagram. So join us on Instagram, Voice of College Football, Voice of CFB. When I can do something about this, that I can't wait. I can't wait to change all this back here. And this is we're probably, what you're going to see, folks, is you're going to see me somewhere else in about a month, probably. I actually have to sell this. This is my mom's place. I am in the process of taking care of it, selling it. And then you're going to see me in another place that's not going to be my permanent place. You're going to see me there probably for a couple months. Then hopefully I'll be where I can permanently be and have the setup the way I want it. The Rhule MVP's here.
Hey, Mark, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing just fine. I'm trying to take down all these suggestions.
Well, I just wanted to expand on my suggestion.
Okay.
Because I've seen it done before where people predict the win-loss record of certain teams as YouTube shorts or do a basic preview.
Yeah.
But the shorts is like TikTok, which is like Instagram Reels.
They're a minute, right?
They're
Max.
a minute long, I believe.
Yeah.
Maybe 90 seconds, but I believe it's a minute long. But the algorithm on YouTube makes no sense to me when it comes to the shorts. Because I've seen it to where YouTubers that are about the same size of you will have 1 million views on a short. And it'll be just like 5 or 6 videos where they have 30,000 subscribers, but their shorts will have like 1 million views, 900,000 views. So I think YouTube pushes out those shorts way more than videos nowadays.
You are probably right. Because I think, people's attention span, and just like I was telling you with my daughter saying the same thing on Instagram with Reels, they're trying to compete with TikTok, and they just think tons of people just want to. And I got to say, I do this myself, whether I'm on Instagram or on Facebook. I get just killed with these Reels, and I do tend to click on them, and they're quick, and I do the same thing. So I guess I should be learning from my own habits.
Right. And those fact videos are something I find myself, because all fact videos is you need like 2 or 3 facts or interesting tongue twisters and all that. And, the next thing I'll know, I'll be reeling through 15, 20 videos, which is only 20 minutes of time. That's one YouTube video on average that you post probably. But you scroll through them, that's 20 separate views. Does that make sense what I'm explaining?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
So I don't know if you would do that for each team. Like, you remember in 2021, you did a South Carolina video, an Auburn one, a Georgia Tech preview. I don't know if you want to do it for every team or just start off with the big teams first.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with the big teams.
Yeah. But something else I've noticed about the algorithm of shorts is when they go viral, makes no sense. So you can upload a short and it'll bomb. Yeah. But like a year later, it'll gain like 1 million views nowhere.
Well, the problem with what we do here, of course, the Rhule, is everything's dated. The stuff that I talk about, it's no longer relevant a week from now. Well, during the off season, it depends. If I'm doing a record prediction, obviously that's going to be good for the next 6 or 7 months. But it's not like I'm doing gardening or plumbing where that's good in 10 years. It's always going to be good. The stuff that we talk about obviously has a very short shelf life.
Right. But maybe like instant reactions, because people want to find about it instantaneously. If you did a 60-second short, maybe being relevant would be a good thing in that case. I don't know. I'm just speculating.
Yeah. And like somebody, Day said something the other night that somebody commented to me and said, you got to clip that off for a short. And I did. I put it on, it's on one of those reels that you see on Instagram. And then there was also, I don't know if you were watching, we had Talk Is Pitt on, and he was just said a couple crazy things. And I was like, Talk Is like, he thought Stanford was in Indiana and he didn't know that Arizona was in the Pac-12. And I said, you know what, you're going to get me shut down here. I just made some kind of comment and I got up and made a big deal about it. And people are like, you need to clip that kind of stuff off. When you rail on somebody or, whatever it is, something that brief that catches people's attention, make that a short.
Yeah, that could work.
Because I got to tell you, Rhule, you were one of the reasons why, not that I wasn't going to do this video anyway, but because I did it last year and you reminded me that I did either the first year head coaches or I think it was the new hires. I ranked the new hires, the coaching new hires.
Yeah, I saw that.
Well, that video last year did like 7,000 views and this year it did like 500.
Yeah.
And like that, I don't understand. I
think it's because of the names and the programs.
That's true. Brian Kelly, Lincoln Riley. Yeah, could be.
I mean, if you took the 5 biggest coaching changes from last year.
Yeah, that's true.
Compared to this year, I mean, Deion Sanders, then what? Jeff Braun, probably the two biggest names.
Yeah. You're right. But see, a lot of this stuff, I just, it's hard to figure out with YouTube, because some of it, the thumbnail's decent, other times it sucks. Sometimes my title sucks. Those things all work, as you well know, into whether, and momentum is a huge thing with YouTube. Like if I put out a video and for some reason it hits the first hour or so, then YouTube's going to keep pushing it, and it's going to take off. But if it stalls, then it's dead. And like,
yeah, it's a strange beast, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very strange beast. Absolutely.
Well, since I'm here, I might as well ask you some football questions, Mark, because that is what this is about, right?
Yes.
So I was looking at those football schedule. Iowa's the most intriguing team to me because I know they've got Brian Ferentz, but I could see 9-3, 10-2.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, they were suggesting they kept him because of the win. Well, if they get 10 wins this year, don't you imagine Brian Ferentz is going to stay there again? Because they've won 10,
average like 12 points a game and go 10-2, and he'll keep his job.
Well, I understand that, but I'm not talking about from your perspective, Mark.
Yeah, that's what I say. He's going to keep his job.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what team do you think you were most willing to watch, or most interesting team in the Big Ten?
Most interesting team in the Big Ten. At a high level, Penn State.
Okay. Which team is the most intriguing team?
At more of a development, okay, can they possibly break out? I think that Wisconsin, well, I'll answer it right there, Wisconsin, but I do believe in the West, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, and Minnesota. That's, again, every time those four teams play, who knows? They're the four best teams until Nebraska proves otherwise. But I am intrigued with what Mike Loxley's doing at Maryland. See if they can take a step. Talia's coming back at quarterback.
Now, I did some scheduling. I'm pretty sure Penn State, okay, they play some nobody-like team like Howard or somebody like that, a non-conference opponent before they play Ohio State, where Ohio State has to play Purdue the week before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's at Purdue, too. Purdue's a capable team.
Sure.
Do you think that could play a factor into next week before they match up?
Sure. Oh, I think that's, coaches wouldn't admit to this, but if Penn State's playing whoever you just mentioned, they can basically they can prepare for Ohio State for 2 weeks. They're not losing to whoever. They're going to beat them by 6 touchdowns, where Ohio State legitimately has to take Purdue seriously. Yeah.
Right. And, last year I made a big thing about 3 SEC teams making the playoff, Mark. Yes. You remember that?
I do.
Probably my favorite take I ever made. But,
we enjoyed it. We all did.
Oh, yeah. If there was a conference that gets 3 teams in the playoff this year, I think it'd be the Big Ten.
So to do it, they all have to win against each other. Of course, the big 3. They can't. Nobody can sweep. Most likely. Yeah, really. Like Ohio State needs to beat Penn State. Penn State beats Michigan. Michigan beats Ohio State. Something like that. So they're all 11-1. That's what it's going to take. Right.
And I think with how even those teams are perceived to be this year, I think that's pretty likely. I mean,
yeah.
As much as last year Ohio State blew out Penn State in the fourth quarter, that was a pretty good game for a while.
Yeah. Oh, it was, I think they were down with 9 minutes left in the game. So, yeah, it was a really good game. Ohio State goes to Notre Dame and Wisconsin, in addition to playing Michigan and Penn State.
Right. I don't think 10-2 Ohio State would make the college football playoff, though.
No.
But if they were the third team, let's say Michigan beats Penn State and Penn State beats Ohio State, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But they just dominate Notre Dame, okay? I think that would be the best case scenario for the Big Ten to get 3 teams in the playoff.
Yeah. I love our guy, Connor Johnson, who we know from Connor coming on here and talking football with us that he is so much smarter than this, but he loves to throw this kind of garbage out there just to be funny. Oregon State's better than Penn State.
Oh yeah, we were on the Oregon channel, and he was talking about how Oregon State would win the national championship and just all sorts of stuff that I don't think is ever going to happen.
Connor's giddy right now because Oregon State just won 10 games and finished in the top 15 in the country. Like,
well, you know what they are, Mark? They're 2018 Kentucky.
Yeah.
They're at their absolute peak of what they could ever be. Because they just aren't talented enough to go further than that. And if he honestly thinks they can make make the college football playoff, win the Pac-12 or something like that, I just don't think that's going to happen for him. So,
well, they could make this 12-team playoff.
Yes, but they're not a 12-team playoff next year. It's 4.
Well, sure.
Yeah. They're not making a 14 playoff. I'm sorry to Connor Johnson, the Oregon State man. I just don't see it.
Well, as Connor lets us know, they've got a former 5-star at quarterback, although he's not played like a 5-star where it counts.
Yeah, I know. They got DJ, but I'm not sold that he's an upgrade. So, I still think most of the problem at Clemson was DJ's problem and not the offensive coordinator problem. Now, I could be wrong in that analysis, of course, but DJ's just didn't show me consistency.
No, he's not good. He's not a good quarterback. He's okay. He's all right. And he had 2 remarkable games when he first started in relief of Trevor Lawrence against Notre Dame and Boston College. Then he bottomed out the next season. Then last season, he probably showed us more of who he is. He was better. He improved, but he was just okay. But I will say in his defense that the offensive line play, and especially the receiver play, is not what Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson experienced. They had remarkable wide receiver play, and his was pretty marginal, to be kind.
I understand that, but to me, I still think they're probably as talented, if not more talented, than Oregon State.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's the issue. And like Connor Johnson using basically the Iowa argument of, well, he won the ACC. I think Clemson won the ACC in spite of DJ Uiagalelei, not because of him.
Yes.
So I don't think that holds any merit at all.
I would agree. I'm going to be a little bit kinder than that. I'm going to say that he contributed to it, but he did not put the team on his back. They won because they've got Will Shipley at running back and a ground attack and, of course, a defense. That's what won it. And it was probably this Clemson team, when it was all said and done and we got to see them play Tennessee, South Carolina, and Notre Dame, they weren't as good as the Clemson team that did not win the ACC the year before. This Clemson team, that was a pretty significant drop-off for Clemson football.
Probably one of the most disappointing teams in the country. I know we don't look at them that way, but there was talks of them before last season of them winning the national championship.
Yeah. They had 3 big out-of-conference games, and they didn't look good.
Right. At no point in the season did I think Clemson can win the national championship.
No.
Even after beating Wake, what was it, 51-45 in double overtime?
Yes.
So I just don't see DJ Uiagalelei. I actually think Oregon State probably finishes worse this year than they did last year.
Yeah, I can't really answer that. I would say that, and of course, Connor would have a better breakdown of their personnel and who's coming back. But I think they're going to be really good, and I think they're going to be something similar to what they were last year. Again, keep in mind, Rhule, did you hear me about 10 minutes ago when I said this is going to be our yearly practice? I think we did it last year, where there are about 20 teams, close to 20 teams, based on, I'm tracking this every year, that are either going to increase or decrease their win total by 3 games. And coming up with that many teams is tough. But that's what's going to happen.
Right. And when I think of it like that, I just think of what team is the most likely team to do it. And I could very easily see Oregon State, ranked in the top 15 and them being unranked at the end of the season.
Yeah, you can look at it that way too. So the same thing with the rankings. More than half of the ranked teams in the preseason rankings didn't finish ranked. I think 13 out of the 25 did not finish ranked. So same thing when we look at the preseason top 25. I don't know. It's usually the number's usually more like 7 or 8, 9 in that range, but still. You look at that top 25, at least I do, and it's tough for me to find teams and think, well, they're not going to be ranked. They're not going to be ranked. Like, I usually look at it and think just about all of them are probably going to get ranked, but that's not what happens. And the same thing with just flat out wins. Like, I look at that Purdue schedule thinking they went in 8-4 last year. Okay, they are a prime candidate to be one of those teams that's going to drop by at least 3 wins next year.
Right. Well, I'll give you an early one that I think. I think Utah.
Ooh.
I don't think Utah will be ranked. I think they're out of conference schedule. I think they start off the season 0-2.
Yeah, but I'm talking about increasing or decreasing your win total by 3.
Yeah, I think they can do. How many games did they lose? 3?
Yeah, they went like 9-3.
Well, if they start off 0-2, they lose to USC. That's 3 right there, Mark. Washington on the rise, UCLA on the rise.
Outside of the really, really big games, the game that's going to spark a ton of interest on this channel is going to be the Florida-Utah game. That's going to be phenomenal.
Oh, I know. That's going to be great because I want to hear the excuses because I was told all of last year, the only reason Florida won was because it was in Florida. Well, I wonder what's going to be if Florida wins this year.
But Florida's really not that good. I don't know that they're going to be that good this year.
Mark, they won last year, despite not being that good.
Yeah.
It shows an indictment on the Pac-12 more than how good the SEC is, Mark. That's all that is.
Our buddy TJ Scott's missing this. So yeah, Baylor, Utah, that's a really good matchup. Interesting game, TJ. But see, we've got kind of like a Pac-12 SEC thing going on here because we've got a Pac-12 show during the season, and we've got quite the contingent of Pac-12 fans that love to defend the Pac-12, and then we've got the reality of the SEC and its dominance, and so we had quite the interesting follow-up to the Utah-Florida game and what it really meant.
I love the framing of that situation, as if there wasn't 2 legitimate sides to the debate. You've got this side, which is the Pac-12 side, and then you've got the actual correct side over here, which is the SEC side. I love the way you framed that, Mark.
Tim is noting that the Pac-12 had 6 teams in the top 25. And I at times think that Tim believes that I'm piling on the Pac-12, and I'm not. The Pac-12 prior to last season was horrible for about 5 years, and it was markedly better, tremendously better, improved last year. Was really good, really fun to watch, and good. They did not have the best postseason. It was okay. It wasn't embarrassing. It wasn't what it was in the past, but it still wasn't. They lost to 2 group of 5 teams. They went 3-4. And that's really when they play the rest of the country. So outside the conference, they didn't play that well.
Well, this can go into a larger discussion with the Big Ten because there's just this built-in assumption that once USC and UCLA go into the Big Ten, they're going to do really well, especially USC. But if they were placed in the Big Ten East this season, Mark, I think they're probably the fourth best team in that division.
Yes.
And
Probably.
what would that mean? They go to the Music City Bowl, the Liberty Bowl, something like that?
Something like that.
I mean, is that what they wanted? I heard Lincoln Riley say at his press conference USC was going to be the mecca of college football, right? They were going to be at the center.
Yes.
How come they only finished 8th in recruiting then? 8th place. If they want to win the national championship, I'm sorry, but I just don't see that getting it done for them.
Well, for as much as 8 sounds really good, and it is, you're right. Based on history, it's really not good enough.
Right. And I saw Joe Klatt's podcast today, okay? Yep. And he brought up a great point. They only got 4 of the top 10 players from the state of California.
I noticed that too. I noticed the same thing. I was looking through California's, I think it was when I was putting this video together that I posted today about all the recruiting stuff, and I looked at California's list. Yeah, I thought that was odd.
Well, I'm sure you were told this because I was told this by a lot of USC fans. Don't worry. We're going to lock down California. We're going to lock it down. We don't have to recruit outside our state. We're going to win California. We're going to build our team around California, and we're going to be great because of California football. 40% isn't a great number, Mark.
No. Where did these other players go?
Oregon, Miami.
Oh, Oregon in particular.
Louisville had a few. Not in the top 10, but they got like 2 or 3 players. What did they finish? 8-5 ACC team?
Yeah.
I just don't think that should be acceptable for a team that is going to have, in my opinion, struggle recruiting. Because I don't see how a player from Michigan or Ohio would want to come to USC. I still think family and seeing your family, seeing your kid play is still an important factor in college football. So, you got anything to add to that, Mark?
Well, I'm going to balance that out because it is fun to go along with some of your rants, and I think they're reasonable. I would definitely call you out, like I do, if people say completely unreasonable or unfactual things. There's nothing that you said that's unfactual, but obviously USC, I would be shocked if they are not a major factor in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think they'll be a factor in the Big Ten, like Penn State's a factor. They'll be kind of mentioned as a team that could win it every now and then, but nobody actually expects them except every 4 or 5 years.
If USC turns out to be Penn State in the Big Ten, I'm not going to be surprised because there's nothing wrong with that, but that's really not the USC standard. I expect USC to be better than Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what they'll be. And UCLA will probably be Illinois this year, Minnesota, something like that.
Sure.
8-5, 9-4 type team.
Yeah.
I think that's all I got for you, Mark.
Thanks for jumping on, man. Appreciate it.
No problem. Anybody in the back room or anything like that? Or
nope, we are clear.
Okay. Well, I'll see you next time, Mark.
Thanks, man. Our man, the real MVP, who came on to help out the channel, of course, give me some advice on what we're going to do with these shorts and these not my dress attire for the summer, but scheduling various content for the shorts. And our buddy Connor suggested doing YouTube polls. I do YouTube polls on the community page, but I don't know how to do them in the chat. I'll have to look that up. Right, folks. It's just a little sparse gathering of us right now, late night. So we will wrap it up here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate all of you being here. We did a monster 2-hour and 44-minute show for all of you, and we appreciate you being here because without you, I am talking to the wall. So thanks so much for being here, TJ Scott. And, you know, a number of you have comments and questions that you make that you want me to acknowledge and respond to. If you include the super chat and it lights up, I can see it better. So that's both from a practical standpoint and otherwise. And you know, Tim, you gave me I'm not going to name the individual, but you gave me a tip, and I have that on my phone, and I will look at that and execute it. So, Tim, if you're listening, I am not blowing off your suggestions. It's a good one. But TJ did ask this. Do you think Penn State is the third best team in the Big Ten and USC will be better? Are you talking about like this specific season, 2022? If you put USC and Penn State in 2022 on a field, I have no idea who would win. That's a toss-up game. Over the course of the season, who do I think was better? Penn State was a more solid team, a much better defensive team. USC was a better offensive team, but Penn State substantially better. I think Penn State was slightly better than USC, but if they played, who knows? I'm talking about going forward. There is no question that USC has much more potential to go forward. Much more potential to be a dominant team in the Big Ten. No question about that. Pennsylvania's losing talent. Penn State's been able to deal with that, much like Ohio State has. It's not been an issue, but it can be difficult going to other places in the country and drawing folks in. TJ Scott says he's got an email question. I can't see my email right now, so I will answer that. But folks, don't necessarily get into the habit of emailing me questions. Sometimes people hit me up on Twitter and DM me. Jason, thank you so much for that contribution. I appreciate that. People DM me and they ask me stuff, and I think, you know, I'm here like you know, between 11 live streams for teams and then the call-in shows like 20 hours a week. and you have to DM me on Twitter with a question. So anyway, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. I noted this the other day, and no, I'm not bragging, but you got to dive into a little self-promotion at times. So I noted this the other day, and I'm going to follow it up with another one. Somebody sent me a hype video, a Michigan hype video. It was produced by the actual University of Michigan football program, and it was on their official Instagram page that you see right there that you can follow me on Instagram. Anyway, on the official Michigan Instagram page with like 600,000 followers, and their hype video for their running backs started with my take on the Michigan running backs. And then it went to, you know, a lot of calls from Gus Johnson and ESPN guys and etc. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then one day later, I get sent a DM in Twitter, and it's a hype video of Ohio State safety Tanner McAllister, who has entered the NFL draft. And so he's produced a hype video, or Ohio State has. And lo and behold, again, the first comment on it is coming from the Voice of College Football. So I thought, my goodness, it would be nice. So places like the Ohio State University and their official video department, and Michigan and their official video department, are obviously keeping track of us here at the Voice of College Football, because they're pulling audio clips of me talking about Tanner McAllister and Michigan running backs. Yes. So Uncle Rico, I know that I'm not the only one. I'm just saying that, well, actually in these two videos, I was the only one, because everything else on those hype videos were network broadcasters, game announcers, But I understand. I'm not stating it that I'm the only one. I'm just stating it that they're obviously somebody's watching. Last year, it was an Oregon hype video and a Miami hype video that people presented to me to say, hey, we heard your voice on this video. I got you, Uncle Rico. Totally understand. All right, everyone. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Again, our next live stream will most likely be Monday with Tony Altimore to discuss conference realignment and expansion. That's 6 p.m. Eastern time. And also, we will do a live stream sometime before the Super Bowl. We'll do a call-in show, and we will connect the Super Bowl, not just this particular Super Bowl, but just kind of, we will make the college football to Super Bowl connection. We will do that. And I've got so many videos that may turn into shorts now on my docket to get to. So one is a comparison. This won't be for a short, but Tim especially might be interested in this one. I have dissected the performance of the 2021 and 22 Georgia Bulldogs and compared it to the last three teams to go back-to-back. Alabama 2011 and 12, USC 2003 and 4, Nebraska 1994 and 5 to compare their dominance. Matt, thank you so much for the kind comment. Love the show. Mark, keep doing what you're doing. As we enter the 3-hour mark, appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football. Again, we will see you Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. In the meantime, check out the videos and check out all the team channels. Follow me on Facebook and on Instagram as well. See you next time. Thanks, Dependent Fanatic. You too.